The emperor who made Rome weep. Have you ever wondered what happens when immense power falls into the wrong hands? Imagine a leader whose actions caused so much pain that an entire city, an empire, truly mourned. This wasn't just about bad decisions. It was a deep, collective heartbreak where Rome itself seemed to weep. One emperor who caused this profound sadness was Nero. His rule wasn't just harsh. It broke people's trust and filled them with fear. Picture a leader who cared more about lavish parties than his citizens' safety. Rome faced huge fires and constant conspiracies. Nero often seemed distant, even cruel. Their world felt like it was falling apart from the inside, not by invaders, but by the person meant to protect them. It's like when you deeply trust a friend, but they keep letting you down in really hurtful ways. That feeling of betrayal and deep disappointment, multiplied across thousands, was what Rome experienced. Their hope for a good leader just faded. Here's the thing. Power isn't just control. It's a responsibility to care for others. When someone uses that power only for themselves, it leaves emotional scars that can last for generations. The tears Rome shed for emperors like Nero weren't from physical pain. They were for the lost promise of a good leader, for the feeling that their protector had become their tormentor. It shows us that even in big historical stories, basic human feelings, trust, fear, and sorrow, always the most powerful. A ruler lost in his own mind. Have you ever been so lost in your thoughts, maybe worried about something small, that you didn't really hear what someone was saying? Now, imagine being the most powerful person in the world, with an entire empire depending on you, and that feeling becomes your everyday reality. This is about rulers who, for many reasons, lost their connection to the real world outside their own minds. It wasn't just a bad mood. It was a deep shift, where their fears, wild suspicions, or even grand, unrealistic dreams felt more true than the actual empire they governed. Power can be a lonely place. When everyone tells you yes, and no one dares challenge your ideas, your mind can build its own echo chamber. Your worries grow bigger, bouncing around until they become monstrous certainties. Even without proof. Think of it like this. Your brain is a powerful computer. Sometimes, a program gets stuck in a loop, repeating the same task, ignoring new information. For some emperors, their minds got stuck too. They might have believed everyone was conspiring against them, or that they were a god. These thoughts weren't based on what was truly happening in Rome, but on a broken program inside their heads. They couldn't see their people suffering, or the danger their decisions caused, because they were so focused on their own internal drama. It's a deeply sad and tragic situation. To be so powerful, yet so utterly alone and confined within your own thoughts. It reminds us that clear thinking isn't just helpful, it's essential. For leaders, staying connected to the truth, to real people and their needs, is the only way to guide effectively. When the mind goes astray, so often does everything else around it. When power turns a person cruel, have you ever wondered what immense power truly does to a person? It's not just about getting what you want. Here's the thing. Sometimes, when someone gains incredible power, something inside them shifts. A desire to lead can become a need for control. Then, a willingness to hurt others to keep that control. It's like a whisper, growing louder, telling them they are above everyone. They stop seeing people as individuals. Instead, they see tools or obstacles. Think about Roman emperors. They held millions of lives in their hands. No real limits stopped their decisions. This kind of vast, unchecked power could twist even good intentions. It made them paranoid, fearing plots everywhere. When fear mixes with absolute power, cruelty often brews. They forgot human empathy. Imagine playing a video game where you're the all-powerful creator of a virtual world. At first, you make everything perfect. But if there are no rules, it's easy to start deleting things just to see what happens, or making unfair challenges, just because you can. You stop thinking about the little virtual people. You only think about your own endless power. Here's what I found. It's a bit like that with real power. Without something to ground them, to remind them of the people they serve, even good leaders can lose their way. So, this isn't just an ancient story. It's a quiet lesson about human nature. It reminds us that power needs a heart and a conscience. Otherwise, it can become very dangerous. True strength isn't just about control. It's about how gently and wisely you use it. And that's why it matters, to understand the weight of those choices. The short, violent story of a throne. Have you ever thought about what it felt like to sit on the most powerful chair in the world? Not just any chair, but the throne of the Roman Empire. For nearly 500 years, this wasn't just a fancy seat. It was a symbol of absolute control, but also a dangerous trap. It was the ultimate prize, yes, but also a poisoned cup that few could drink from without getting hurt. Getting to be emperor was incredibly hard, a game of high stakes where the losers paid with their lives. But keeping that job, that was often even harder, and it frequently led to a violent end. This wasn't like becoming captain of a team or president of your class. This was a position where your closest advisors, your own family members, or even the soldiers sworn to protect you could turn into your deadliest enemies in an instant. The very people you ruled might suddenly decide they wanted a new leader, and almost always, that decision involved daggers in the dark, poison in a meal, or an army marching against your palace. Imagine being given the most amazing, super rare video game console, one that everyone wants. Your friends, your siblings, even people you barely know. They don't just ask to play. Some might try to trick you, others might try to sneak it away, and some might even try to wrestle it from your hands. Owning it sounds incredible, right? But it brings endless worry and danger. The Roman throne was like that, but with real-life consequences, where losing the game meant losing your actual life. So, this powerful throne wasn't just a symbol of honor or glory. It was a seat of deep loneliness, constant suspicion, and often pure terror. It promised total control, but it usually delivered a life filled with fear and too often a sudden, violent end. It makes you think, doesn't it? What's the real price of having everything, when everything comes with such a heavy, bloody cost? Why this emperor was a total disaster. Have you ever stopped to think about what truly makes a leader, especially someone with immense power, a complete and utter failure? It's not just making a bad decision or losing a battle now and then. When we talk about a Roman emperor being a total disaster, we're diving deep into something far more heartbreaking. We're talking about a time when one person, given the awesome responsibility of an entire empire, instead used that power to inflict real harm, to create widespread chaos, and to leave a legacy of fear and destruction. It's like watching a massive, grand ship, meant to carry thousands to safety, slowly sink because its captain was either too selfish, too cruel, or just too lost in their own mind to steer it properly. The Roman Empire was an incredible, sprawling place, holding millions of lives in its balance. These people depended on their emperor for protection, for justice, and for the basic sense that their world would be stable. But here's the thing. Some emperors completely shattered that trust. They became obsessed with only their own desires, grew suspicious of everyone around them, or simply enjoyed causing pain. When the person at the very top is like that, the entire structure begins to crumble. Imagine, for a moment, that the leader of your school or even your close friend group suddenly started making rules just to mess with everyone, or punishing people unfairly because they felt like it, perhaps even turning friends against each other. How would that make you feel? How would the whole group function? You'd feel scared, unsafe, and perhaps even hopeless. That chaos, that fear, those broken relationships, an emperor's disastrous reign was all of that, but on a scale so vast it echoed across lands and generations. So, when we look back at the lives of these emperors, we're not just reading old stories. We're learning profound lessons about what it means to lead, and what happens when that sacred duty is ignored. It shows us how delicate peace can be, how easily trust can be shattered, and how quickly hope can fade when leadership turns dark. A truly disastrous emperor isn't just someone who made mistakes. It's someone who, through their actions, reminded everyone that even the mightiest empire is only as strong as the human heart that guides it. The leader who caused pure chaos. Have you ever wondered what happens when someone in charge, someone with immense power, completely loses their way? It's a scary thought, right? Imagine a captain steering a ship, but instead of guiding it safely, they start smashing into icebergs on purpose. This isn't just bad leadership. It's a kind of chaos that can tear everything apart, leaving behind fear and confusion. For the ancient Romans, sometimes a leader emerged who didn't just make mistakes, but actively destroyed the very fabric of their society. They turned what was meant to be order into a swirling mess of unpredictability and terror. Here's the thing. True chaos isn't just about things breaking. It's about the feeling that nothing makes sense anymore, that the rules don't apply, and that your world could change for the worse at any moment. Think about a classroom where the teacher suddenly decides to grade everyone randomly, or changes the test questions right before you answer them. You wouldn't know what to study, who to trust, or how to succeed. That feeling of unfairness, that constant worry about the next surprise, that's what it was like for ordinary Romans when a truly chaotic emperor sat on the throne. They didn't just make bad decisions. They made choices that made daily life a nightmare for countless people. Laws changed on a whim, people were punished for no clear reason, and the future felt completely uncertain. And that's why it matters to understand this. A leader who causes chaos doesn't just hurt individuals, they weaken the spirit of an entire nation. It teaches us that even the mightiest empires can crumble from within, not just from outside enemies. It shows us how precious stability is, how much we need to trust that the people in charge will act with some kind of reason, even if we don't always agree with them. Because when that trust breaks, when pure chaos reigns, it's not just a government that falls apart. It's the hope and peace of mind of every single person living under that rule. And seeing such a period helps us appreciate how vital good, stable leadership truly is for everyone's well-being. Rome's worst nightmare on the throne. Have you ever thought about what it means for one person to have ultimate power? And what if that person was not just bad, but truly awful? Here's the thing. Rome was a mighty empire, a giant machine of people and places. But even the greatest machine can break if its most important part fails. When we talk about Rome's worst nightmare on the throne, we're not just talking about someone who made a few mistakes. We're talking about an emperor whose very presence brought suffering, fear, and even ruin to millions. Imagine a huge ship sailing across a vast ocean with thousands of people on board. The captain holds all their lives in their hands. They decide the direction. They keep everyone safe. But what if that captain suddenly started steering into icebergs on purpose? What if they locked up the crew, ignored warnings, and began setting fires? That's kind of what it was like when a truly awful emperor ruled Rome. They had the power to guide, to protect, to make life better for an entire civilization. But instead, they used that power to cause harm, driven by fear, cruelty, or just a complete lack of care for others. These emperors weren't just incompetent, they were actively destructive. They might have been paranoid, seeing enemies everywhere, even among their closest friends. They might have been incredibly selfish, spending all the empire's money on themselves, while people starved. Or, they might have simply enjoyed being cruel, using their power to torment others. This can help you understand how much one person's character can shape the world around them, especially when they sit on a throne. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How did people endure such rulers? And what does it teach us about the very nature of power and the deep responsibility that comes with it? It's a sobering thought, knowing that one person could cast such a long, dark shadow over so many lives. He didn't just rule, he destroyed. Voiceover. When we talk about destruction, our minds often go straight to buildings falling or armies clashing. We picture battles and ruins. But what if a ruler's destruction was far more quiet, far more deadly? Imagine an emperor who didn't just defeat enemies, but slowly, deeply, destroyed the very heart of his own people. This isn't about physical damage, it's about something much deeper. The breaking of trust, the crushing of hope, the slow chipping away at everything that makes a society strong and fair. For some Roman emperors, their actions felt less like leading and more like tearing down from the inside. They didn't always need an invading army to cause ruin. Sometimes it was their own fear, anger, or terrible decisions that truly brought destruction. They might make unfair laws, or treat citizens with such cruelty that people stopped believing in their leaders, or even in justice itself. This kind of damage doesn't leave visible scars on the land, but leaves deep, invisible wounds on a nation's soul. Here's the thing. Think about a friendship. If someone you trust starts to spread rumors, or constantly lets you down, they don't physically hurt you, but they destroy the bond, right? The trust, the good feelings, they just disappear. It's a destruction of something precious, even without a single punch thrown. That's what some emperors did to Rome. They ruined the connection between the people and their government, between citizens and the idea of a good life. So, when we look back at these powerful figures, it's not just about how many battles they won or land they conquered. It's also about what they left behind in the hearts and minds of their people. The ruins of buildings can be rebuilt, but a shattered spirit, a lost belief in fairness, those wounds can take generations to heal. And that's why understanding this quieter, more profound kind of destruction matters so much when we think about what makes a leader truly terrible. A time of fear and broken promises. Have you ever had someone you looked up to, someone important, make a promise to you, only to see them break it. Maybe it was a parent, a teacher, or even a friend. That knot in your stomach, that feeling of disappointment, it hurts, right? Now, imagine that feeling stretched across an entire empire, where millions of people depended on the promises of one person, the emperor in ancient Rome. Especially during its tougher times, life was often like that. It wasn't just about battles and grand buildings. It was about everyday people living with a deep, unsettling fear. Fear that their leader might be cruel. Fear that the person in charge would take their land, or even their life, without a second thought. And worse, there was the constant worry about broken promises. Emperors would rise to power, swearing to bring peace, justice, or a better life. But many times, these were just words, whispered on the wind, quickly forgotten when power became too tempting. Think about it like this. Imagine your whole class is working on a big group project. Your group leader promises to do their part, to get the research done, to make sure everyone's ideas are heard. But then, they don't show up. They don't do the work. The project falls apart. That broken promise doesn't just affect one person. It affects everyone in the group. It creates stress, anger, and makes it hard to trust that leader again. For the Roman people, a broken promise from an emperor could mean chaos for an entire city, or a province. This wasn't just about small disappointments. It was about a constant state of uncertainty. People lived with the heavy weight of knowing their safety, their future, even their children's well-being, could be snatched away by a single, unfulfilled word from someone at the very top. It reminds us how deeply trust connects us all, and how, once shattered, the pieces of a broken promise can cast a long, cold shadow, even across centuries. The emperor who only thought of himself. What truly happens when someone in power forgets everyone but themselves? Imagine an emperor whose every choice centers on their personal desires. This isn't about strength or protecting people. It's a deep, sad selfishness, where the empire becomes a stage for one person's ego. Here's the thing. Roman emperors held immense power, controlling armies, laws, and millions of lives. Most saw this as a sacred trust, a duty to Rome. But for some, that responsibility felt like a burden or an easy opportunity. They saw the empire as their personal piggy bank. They built huge statues, demanded endless feasts, and spent fortunes on their comfort while people suffered. They thought loyalty was owed, not earned. And that's why it matters. Think about a basketball team. You have a great player, but instead of passing or helping the team win, they only shoot for themselves. They want all the glory. Maybe they score a lot, but the team loses. Fans are disappointed. Other players feel ignored. That's how it feels when an emperor only thinks of themselves. The team, the vast, hopeful Roman Empire, weakens and struggles because the leader forgot their role. It leaves a kind of hollow ache, doesn't it? This isn't just about good laws or winning battles. It's about the true heart of leadership. Lasting power comes from lifting others up. A ruler who thinks only of themselves might gain much, but loses something far more important, the trust and spirit of their people. In the end, that's a lonely way to rule. When the empire started to crumble, have you ever wondered how something truly massive, something that felt like it would stand forever, eventually begins to fade? The Roman Empire wasn't destroyed in one big, dramatic crash. Instead, it was more like a slow, quiet surrender, a long goodbye that stretched over centuries. Imagine a giant, ancient tree that stood through countless storms. It doesn't fall in an instant. Instead, a branch withers, then another, bark cracks, and over many years, its mighty presence slowly diminishes. This is what happened to Rome. It wasn't just about armies attacking from the outside. The real cracks often started from within. Think about a school project with a group. If people stop listening, if members don't do their part, or if the leader isn't guiding well, the whole project can fall apart, even if the initial idea was brilliant. For Rome, the emperors themselves often made choices that weakened the empire. They fought each other, spent too much, bored, or couldn't handle the many problems that piled up. There's a deep sadness in watching something so grand slowly lose its way. The people living through those times must have felt a strange shift, like the ground was becoming less solid under their feet. Their world, which had seemed so permanent, was changing in ways they couldn't control. It's a quiet ache, realizing even the strongest things, built with effort and dreams, are not immune to time and human flaws. It reminds us that everything we create, no matter how magnificent, needs constant care. wise leaders, and a shared belief to truly endure. And when those things start to slip away, even an empire built to last forever can begin its slow, sorrowful descent. The guy who just couldn't get it right. Have you ever had one of those days where it feels like everything you touch just breaks, like no matter how hard you try, you can't seem to get anything right? It's a frustrating feeling, right? Now, imagine that feeling, but stretched over years, with the fate of an entire empire resting on your shoulders. For Rome, some emperors, despite all their power, simply couldn't get it right. This wasn't always about being cruel or unfair. Sometimes it was about being so unsuited for the job that their leadership slowly, painfully, wore down the system they were meant to protect. It's a heavy thought, having the most important role, but lacking the right heart or mind for it. Think about someone like Commodus. He inherited the empire from his father, Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's greatest emperors. Talk about big shoes to fill. But Commodus, he just wanted to be a gladiator. He loved fighting in the arena, even if it was rigged for him to win. He spent all his time on these games, ignoring the real work of ruling. He left important decisions to others, often terrible people who only cared about themselves. So, the empire drifted. Money was wasted, people suffered, and Rome's stability started to crumble. It was like putting someone in charge of building a big skyscraper, but all they want to do is play video games in the office. The building won't get built right, or it might even fall apart. They missed the whole point of their job. And here's the thing, sometimes the greatest power can also be the heaviest burden, especially when it falls on someone who isn't ready, or doesn't care, or just misunderstands what it means to lead. It makes you wonder, right? What happens when the person holding all the cards doesn't even know how to play the game? How many people pay the price for that? It reminds us that leadership isn't just about having power, it's about understanding responsibility. Sometimes, the best choice isn't to rule, but to admit you're not the one who should. It's a quiet, sad lesson from history. His reign was all about pain. Have you ever thought about what it means when a leader, someone with immense power, only seems to create suffering? This isn't about making a few mistakes or tough decisions that hurt some people for a greater good. Here's the thing. This is about a ruler whose entire time in charge was like a dark cloud, making life miserable for almost everyone. Every day under this kind of emperor felt like living under a constant, dull ache. It's hard to imagine, but for some Roman emperors, their power wasn't used to build or protect. Instead, it was used to hurt. They brought fear, took away people's hope, and often caused real physical pain or even death without good reason. Think about it like a wound that never heals. Instead of getting better, it just gets worse, infecting everything around it. That's what a reign of pain can be like for a whole empire. The very person meant to guide and guard a civilization becomes its biggest tormentor. Consider it like a powerful, widespread sickness. Not one that makes you cough, but one that infects your spirit, your safety, and your trust. It spreads from the emperor's cruel choices, touching families, soldiers, and even the highest officials. And that's why it matters, because when one person's leadership is solely focused on their own twisted desires, the cost is paid by millions. It reminds us that power isn't just about what you can do, it's about what you choose to do with it. Even centuries later, the memory of such pain serves as a quiet warning about the deep, lasting scars cruelty can leave on history and on people's hearts. A sad chapter in Roman history. Have you ever thought about what truly breaks an empire, even one as mighty as Rome? Sometimes, the biggest challenges don't come from a fearsome enemy at the gates. No, sometimes the damage comes from within, like a sickness spreading slowly through the body. This is a sad chapter we need to talk about. Imagine a time when the powerful leaders of Rome, the very emperors meant to guide and protect, became a source of fear and instability themselves. It wasn't always grand battles and glorious victories. There were periods when emperors changed faster than the seasons, often because they were overthrown or even murdered by their own guards or rivals. Picture a country where the person in charge might be gone tomorrow, replaced by someone else just as quickly. How do you plan for the future when the present is so uncertain? How do you trust the system? It's a bit like when you're working on a big group project for school. Everyone on the team is smart, and you have all the resources you need. But then, some people start arguing constantly, or one person tries to take all the credit, or no one can agree on a simple plan. Suddenly, the project isn't failing because it was too hard, but because the team itself fell apart from the inside. All that potential, all that smartness, just wasted because the internal structure broke down. For Rome, this meant years, sometimes decades, where people lived with a knot of worry in their stomachs. The constant changes, the selfish leaders, the lack of a steady hand, it slowly, painfully, wore down the spirit of the empire. It reminds us that power alone isn't enough to build something lasting. True strength, the kind that helps something last for centuries, also needs trust, a sense of fairness, and leaders who truly care for the people, not just for their own gain. And sometimes, looking back at these moments, it's just really, really sad to see so much potential crumble from within. The emperor who was simply incompetent. Have you ever watched someone try their best, but just miss the mark, not because they were mean, or even trying to mess things up, but because they simply couldn't do it? This is what we mean by incompetence. It's not about being evil or cruel, it's about a deep, quiet inability to handle a job, no matter how important. Imagine being in charge of something huge, like an entire empire, but lacking the skills, the judgment, or the understanding to truly lead. The Roman emperors held immense power, a power that could build cities or destroy nations. But here's the thing. What happens when that power lands in the hands of someone who just isn't capable? For Rome, an incompetent emperor wasn't just a bad leader. They were a direct threat to the lives of millions. Decisions about food, defense, law, and order all rested on their shoulders. When those shoulders were too weak, the empire would wobble, sometimes even crumble a little. It's a heavy thought, isn't it? The idea that one person's unsuitability could cause so much suffering and instability for so many. It wasn't about being a villain. It was about being profoundly unfit. Think about it like this. Imagine trying to lead your school's biggest group project. You have all the resources, the smart teammates, and a clear goal. But if you can't organize tasks, understand the different parts, or make clear decisions, that project will struggle. It's not that you want it to fail, you just can't make it work well. An incompetent emperor was like that, but instead of a project grade, they were dealing with armies, economies, and people's entire lives. The saddest part about incompetence, especially in a leader, is the quiet tragedy it leaves behind. It's not a grand, dramatic fall, but a slow, heartbreaking decay, born from a simple lack of ability. It reminds us that power without skill or wisdom is a fragile, dangerous thing. Sometimes, the deepest wounds aren't caused by hatred, but by a simple, profound incapability to carry the weight of responsibility. He lost Rome's trust, and more. Have you ever felt completely let down by someone you really counted on? That heavy feeling in your chest when a friend breaks a big promise, or a leader doesn't do what they said they would. Imagine that feeling, but stretched across an entire city, an entire empire, a quiet, heavy disappointment. That's a bit like what happened when an emperor lost Rome's trust. It wasn't just about making bad decisions, it was much deeper than that. For Roman emperors, their power wasn't just about having soldiers or fancy titles. It was about earning and keeping people's believing they were strong, fair, and cared about Rome. When that belief, that deep trust, started to crack, everything else started to crumble too. From everyday order to big decisions. Don't think about it like this. Trust is like the foundation of a huge, amazing building. If the foundation is strong, the building stands tall for ages. But if tiny cracks start to appear, and then bigger ones, slowly, the whole structure becomes shaky. Even if the walls look fine, inside, everyone knows it's not safe anymore. The air itself feels different. It's a bit like a student trying to lead a group project. At first, everyone trusts them to assign tasks fairly and make sure everyone does their part. But what if the leader starts to take all the credit, or doesn't do their own work, or is just plain unfair? Slowly, the other students stop listening. They might even try to find a way to work around them. The group falls apart, not because of one big fight, but because the trust that held them together is gone. The project suffers, and so does the leader's reputation. That feeling of disappointment spreads, hard to get rid of. This kind of betrayal, this slow fading of hope, it leaves a mark. Not just on the emperor, who might lose his throne or even his life, but on the people too. They feel abandoned, confused. They lose faith in the system, in the idea that someone truly cares for their well-being. And that empty space, where trust used to be, is a really sad and dangerous place for an empire to be. It shows us how fragile even the greatest power can be, if it doesn't have the honest support of its people. A leader who made everything worse. Have you ever thought about how one person, with all the power in their hands, could actually make things much, much worse for everyone. It's a pretty heavy idea, isn't it? In the long story of ancient Rome, there were times when an emperor didn't just make a few bad choices. They steered the entire empire onto a dark path, deeper into trouble. They took what was stable, or at least just getting by, and actively made life harder for millions, sometimes for generations. Being an emperor meant carrying an enormous weight. You were supposed to protect a vast civilization, keep people safe, and make wise decisions. But sometimes, a leader did the exact opposite. Maybe they ignored good advice, or put their own selfish desires first. Perhaps they were simply bad at governing. Because their position was so powerful, their mistakes were never small. They didn't just affect one street or town. Their bad choices rippled out, touching every family, soldier, and merchant across the Roman world. It's like being on a big school project. If one person has a really important part, say the main research, and they just mess it up, or hand in nothing at all, suddenly everyone's grade, everyone's hard work is at risk. It can bring the whole project down. These emperors weren't just unpopular or a little frustrating. Their rule often led to true hardship and fear. Food prices soared, armies lost battles, honest people faced injustice, and the very feeling of hope started to fade away for many. It's a sad but real part of history, showing us the deep human cost of when leadership goes terribly wrong. It makes you think about how much trust we place in those who lead, and how truly important it is for them to consider the profound impact their character and decisions have on the well-being and future of all. When we see such a downfall, it quietly reminds us to value those who strive for good, no matter how small their role. The mistakes that haunted Rome. Have you ever wondered if huge problems start with small choices? Rome, this massive empire, didn't just fall because of invaders. Often, it was hidden cracks, quiet decisions by emperors and leaders that slowly weakened its strength. Imagine building something strong, like a tall sand. If you keep taking tiny scoops of sand from its base, it might look fine for a while, but eventually, it will crumble. For Rome, these scoops of sand were things like picking the wrong person for a big job, or letting corruption spread. Sometimes, an emperor promised too much to soldiers, giving the army too much power, or they got greedy, taxing people so much that families struggled to eat. Trust in the government faded. It wasn't always a big battle. Sometimes it was just bad decisions, one after another, piling up. Think about a group project at school. If everyone ignores their small part, saying someone else will do it, or it's not a big deal, what happens? The project slowly falls apart. One person forgets a paragraph, another doesn't check facts, and soon, the whole thing is a mess. That's kind of what happened in Rome, but on a huge scale. Emperors made choices that seemed smart for them, but they ignored the long-term health of the empire. They forgot that trust, fairness, and looking out for everyone were the glue holding Rome together. Here's why this matters to us today. History isn't just old facts, it's a lesson book. It shows us that even the most powerful leaders can make choices that lead to ruin. It reminds us that our own small decisions can have a big effect. So, looking back at Rome, we see a clear warning. Ignoring problems can be a silent destroyer, more dangerous than any clear enemy. Just a placeholder, but a bad one. Have you ever seen something that's supposed to be important, but it's just there, like a broken clock on the wall? It still takes up space, but it tells no time. That's a bit like some Roman emperors. They sat on the grandest throne, held immense power, but here's the thing, they were just placeholders. These were rulers who occupied the emperor's seat, wore the purple robes, had all the authority, yet their hearts weren't truly invested, or their minds weren't strong enough. They didn't really lead, they just existed in the position. Imagine a team captain who just stands on the field, watching everything happen without guiding their players. What happens then? Things start to unravel. Hope fades. It's a quiet, profound sadness, isn't it? To be given everything, the chance to shape history, to truly change lives for the better, and yet, do nothing good with it. Sometimes, they didn't just do nothing, they actively made things worse through weakness or indifference. Their time on the throne became an empty promise, a silent echo of what could have been. Their names might be whispered, but not for greatness. More like a shadow where a guiding light should have shone, leaving the empire to drift. Think about your favorite video game. You need a key item to finish a level, but the game gives you an item that looks important, but does absolutely nothing. It takes up space in your inventory, but offers no help. It just sits there, making the game harder because it's not what you need. That useless item is a placeholder, a bad one. It hinders your progress by denying you what you truly require. That's the silent tragedy of a placeholder emperor. They weren't always cruel or evil in the dramatic movie way. Often, they were just lost, or weak, or simply didn't care enough to grasp their duty. But in such a powerful role, not caring, or being weak, can inflict as much damage as active cruelty. A ruler's indifference can slowly poison an entire society, making people feel forgotten. It leaves behind a cold, unsettling question. What if someone truly worthy had been there instead? The weight of what didn't happen can feel heavier, sometimes, than the stories of great battles. It's a quiet ache for a chance missed. The emperor who was forgotten for a reason. Have you ever wondered why some stories echo through time, while others just fade away, almost completely? We talk about the famous emperors, the great ones, and even the truly awful ones who left huge marks. But here's the thing. Sometimes, an emperor was so bad, so deeply disliked, that people went out of their way to make sure he was forgotten. Not just forgotten by accident, but erased on purpose. In ancient Rome, they had a punishment for this, a kind of historical forgetting called damnatio. It literally means condemnation of memory. If an emperor or important person was judged terrible after they died, their name would be chipped off public buildings. Their statues would be pulled down and broken. Their images on coins might even be scratched out. It was a clear message. This person was so awful, so harmful to Rome, that they didn't deserve to be remembered at all. It was like history itself was saying, nope, we're not keeping this one. Think about it like this. Imagine a really bad leader for your school club or sports team. Someone who was unfair, made everyone feel small, and completely messed things up for the team. When that person finally leaves, nobody wants to talk about them anymore, right? You don't want to see their picture in the yearbook or hear their name. You want to pretend they were never there, so you can all move on and make things better. It's not just forgetting, it's choosing to forget, so healing can begin. So, when we come across an emperor whose story is barely a whisper, whose name doesn't pop up in many old books, it might not be because he was boring. It might be because his actions were so destructive, his rule so filled with pain, that the people who lived through it decided he simply wasn't worth remembering. History, in a way, delivers its own quiet judgment. It reminds us that what we choose to remember, and what we choose to let go of, tells us a lot about our values and what truly matters. When Rome needed a hero, they got him. Have you ever felt truly hopeless? Imagine Rome, a vast empire, feeling exactly that way. Its armies struggled, losing battles. Leaders fought among themselves, caring more about power than people. Citizens were scared, their lives uncertain. Their world felt ready to crash. Shadows deepened, hope dimmed daily. Many felt Rome ending. But here's the thing. Sometimes, when things look their worst, someone steps forward. Someone who sees the fear, feels the pain, and decides not to stand by. This isn't magic. It's raw courage. It's about a person who understands what needs to be done, even when it's hard, and others gave up. Think about a team losing badly in a big game. Everyone's heads are down. Fans leave, sure of defeat. But then, one player, perhaps not the star, tries something bold. They make a great play, inspires teammates. Suddenly, the energy shifts. The team starts to believe. That spark changes everything, for the game and how people feel. Rome, many times, desperately needed that spark. It needed someone brave to step up when the idea of Rome seemed to be crumbling. Often, a powerful emperor, burdened with immense problems, answered that call. It reminds us that even when the path ahead seems dark, there's always a quiet chance for a new way. It's a quiet strength, a belief things can get better, even when they seem impossible. And that's why it matters, because hope, a small flicker, can guide us through darkest nights. A very short ride on the imperial throne. Have you ever thought about what it truly means to hold immense power, even if just for a fleeting moment? Imagine the entire Roman Empire, a vast world, resting on your shoulders. Now imagine that feeling lasting only for a breath, a few weeks, or even a couple of months. Here's the thing, not all Roman emperors enjoyed long, glorious reigns. For some, their time on the imperial throne was incredibly short, a mere flash in the long story of Rome. They stepped into the most powerful job on earth, only to be swept away almost immediately by plots, rebellions, or sudden, brutal ends. Think about the mix of triumph and terror. One day, you're celebrated, adored, given everything. The next, your life is in danger, and everything you hoped to achieve vanishes. The Roman court was a dangerous place, a viper's nest, where friends turned foes quickly. It's like climbing the tallest mountain, reaching the very top, and then, before you can even take in the view, you slip and fall. These emperors were given the keys to the kingdom, but for many, the locks changed faster than they could turn the key. This can help you understand the sheer unpredictability of ancient Roman life, especially at the very top. It's a bit like working super hard to get chosen for the main role in the school play. You practiced your lines, you feel the excitement, you finally get on stage for opening night, and then, suddenly, you get sick and can't perform for the rest of the run. All that preparation, all that hope, for such a brief moment in the spotlight. That's how it felt for some of these emperors, reaching the ultimate peak, only to disappear almost immediately. So, here's what happened. These short reigns, though often ending in tragedy, teach us a powerful lesson. They remind us that true strength might not be found in how long you hold a title, but in what you face, or even how briefly you stand firm against overwhelming odds. It makes you think about the value of time, and how even the most powerful positions are only temporary. And that's why it matters. It makes us wonder what truly endures beyond a crown and a fleeting moment of glory. The guy who tried, but failed hard. Have you ever tried your absolute best at something, poured your whole self into it, but still, in the end, it just didn't work out? Maybe you practiced for weeks for a big presentation, or studied every night for a tough test, and when the results came back, they just weren't what you hoped for. That feeling, the quiet sting of knowing you gave it everything but fell short, it's a heavy one. Imagine that feeling, but multiplied by the weight of an entire empire. That's a bit like the story of Emperor Otho. He wasn't born into power, and he certainly didn't seize it through clever, long-term plots. He became emperor during one of Rome's most chaotic times, a period famously called the Year of Four Emperors. It was a whirlwind of ambition and betrayal, where the empire felt like a ship caught in a violent storm, tossed by giant waves. Otho, in his short time, truly tried to steady that ship. He tried to bring order, to heal the deep cracks after years of turmoil. He even tried to avoid a massive civil war with another general, Vitellius, by offering to share power. He wanted peace, but the forces around him, the deep-seated loyalties and rivalries, were simply too strong. It was like trying to stop a waterfall with your bare hands, an impossible task. No matter how much effort you put in, when his armies were defeated, Otho faced a terrible choice. He could have kept fighting, prolonging a bloody civil war that would have torn Rome apart even further. But he saw the cost, all the young lives that would be lost, and made an agonizing decision. He chose to end his own life, not out of weakness, but to prevent more bloodshed, to spare his people from further suffering. It was an act of profound, heartbreaking sacrifice. Sometimes, true strength isn't about winning at all costs, but about understanding when to stop, when the fight itself will cause more harm than any possible victory. His story reminds us that even when our efforts fall short, the intention behind them, the desire to do good, can still echo with a quiet kind of nobility. It's a sad truth that sometimes the hardest tries lead to deep failures, but even then, those failures can teach us about courage and compassion. Not terrible, but definitely not good. Think about this. What does it mean to be a leader who isn't a monster, but also isn't a hero? It's a quiet, strange space in history, isn't it? Here's the thing. Ruling an empire as vast and powerful as Rome was an unbelievably heavy job. Some emperors fell right into this difficult middle ground. They weren't like the truly evil ones we hear about, who caused widespread suffering and fear. Their names don't make you shiver. But they also weren't the amazing, wise leaders who built incredible things or brought peace for generations. Their reigns don't inspire grand tales. These emperors just were. They managed to keep the empire running. Mostly, the world didn't fall apart on their watch, but it didn't exactly shine brighter either. Maybe they faced problems too enormous for any single person to fix. Maybe they simply weren't cut out for such a massive role, even if they tried their best. It's like a quiet sigh of, oh well, when you look back at their time in charge. No great damage, but no great good either. You can think of it like being on a big sports team. You're not the star player who scores all the amazing goals, the one everyone cheers for. You're not the one who makes all the big plays, but you're also not the player who messes up every time or lets the other team score. You show up, you do your part, You don't really hurt the team's chances, but you don't really help it win the championship either. The team just keeps playing, and that's okay, sometimes, but it's not inspiring, is it? It's not a legacy that people talk about for centuries. And here's what I found when we think about these kinds of emperors. It's a quiet reminder that simply not failing isn't the same as truly succeeding. It's a subtle sadness, almost, the lost chance for something genuinely great. It teaches us about the weight of expectation, and the simple human difficulty of truly standing out. For good or for bad, when history judges you so harshly. An emperor who was just confused. Have you ever felt completely lost, like you're in charge of something huge, but have no idea what to do next? That feeling of being totally overwhelmed, like standing at the start of a winding maze with no map. Sometimes, even the most powerful people in history felt that way. We often think of emperors as brave or evil, wise or wicked. But what about an emperor who was simply ... confused? This isn't about someone with bad intentions or a cruel heart. It's about a person sitting on the most important throne in the world, facing decisions that affected millions, yet feeling utterly out of their depth. They might have tried their best, but their mind was clouded by uncertainty. Or maybe they just didn't understand the enormous job they had. The Roman Empire was a giant, complicated machine, and if its leader couldn't grasp how it worked, everything could start to break down. Take Emperor Didius Julius. Here's the thing. He actually bought the title of emperor at an auction. Imagine that. He thought money could solve everything. But then, the real problems started. He was supposed to lead Rome, protect its borders, make huge policy choices. But he didn't have a plan. He didn't have the trust of the people or the army. He just bought a problem he couldn't solve. His reign was a short, sad whisper in history. Less than 3 months, filled with desperate, confused attempts to cling to power he never truly understood. It's a bit like when you're handed a huge, complicated project at school, maybe the biggest one you've ever had. You might have all the books and materials, but if you don't know how to start, or what the goal really is, you just feel this wave of helplessness. You try one thing, then another, but nothing seems right. You're not being lazy or bad, you're just completely lost in the task. And that's what we see with a confused emperor. Sometimes, the most damaging thing isn't a ruler who is cruel, but one who is simply bewildered. Someone who sits on a throne, trying to lead, but with eyes that don't see the path forward. It makes you feel a quiet sadness for them, caught in a role too grand for their understanding. It reminds us how much clarity and a true sense of purpose matter, not just in great leaders, but in all of us trying to find our way. He made some waves, but not good ones. Have you ever seen someone try really hard to get noticed, to make a big splash, but it just wasn't good, like they wanted to be remembered, but for all the wrong reasons? Here's the thing about some Roman emperors. They had immense power. They could change laws, start wars, and build grand things. But some, even with all that power, didn't use it to help people. Instead, their actions sent dark, troubling waves through the empire. Imagine a leader who thinks being powerful means being loud or even scary. They make big decisions, trying to change everything quickly. But when choices come from ego or fear, they often hurt more than they help. They weren't building up their people. They were making life harder, just to push their own ideas or show how strong they were. One bad choice from someone so high up caused years of trouble for thousands of families. It created deep, emotional scars that lasted generations. Think about a captain on a sports team. This captain wants to win, so they yell at teammates, make harsh rules, and blame everyone. They think they're making waves, pushing people to work harder. But what really happens? The team gets sad. People stop trusting. The captain gets noticed, sure, but not as a great leader. They're noticed for making everyone feel bad, for breaking team spirit. And often the team plays worse. It's a powerful lesson, isn't it? Real strength isn't about how much noise you make, or grand things done for show. It's about the quiet, steady work of lifting others up, making things truly better. The most important waves gently build, carrying everyone towards a better future, not crashing down and leaving chaos. Emperors who made a positive mark knew a lasting legacy isn't about being seen, but about being genuinely felt, in a good way. The ruler who left Rome no better off. Have you ever felt like you worked really hard on something, but when it was all done, nothing seemed to change much? Like you put in the time, but the world around you stayed exactly the same. That feeling, that quiet sense of a missed chance, is what we consider when we look at a ruler who left Rome no better off. This isn't about the emperors who were terrible, who burned cities or started awful wars. No, those rulers leave a clear, painful mark. This is about something different. It's about a leader who simply occupied the top spot. A person with immense power, but whose time in charge was like a still pond. No new ideas flowed in, no old problems were truly fixed, and the empire, with all its struggles and hopes, just drifted. They were present, yes, but their presence didn't make Rome grow, heal, or even learn. Think of it like being the captain of a very big ship. You have the map, the crew, and the wheel. You're supposed to steer it somewhere, maybe to new lands, or away from a storm. But imagine a captain who just stands there, holding the wheel, while the ship slowly drifts with the currents, never making real progress. The ship stays afloat, sure, but it never reaches its destination. That's how it felt for Rome under such a ruler. The vast empire had huge problems: poverty, rebellion, outside threats, and it desperately needed a steady, active hand. But this ruler just let it all continue, unchanged. So, when their time was over, Rome was still Rome. It hadn't gotten worse in a dramatic way, but it hadn't gotten better either. Nothing truly changed. And maybe that's one of the saddest kinds of leadership failure, not causing ruin, but simply causing nothing at all. It makes you wonder, what's the point of holding so much power if you leave no positive mark? It's a quiet tragedy, a lost opportunity for greatness, a name you might not even know. And why have you ever thought about the people history forgets? When we talk about Roman emperors, big names come to mind: Caesar, Augustus, Nero. They built empires, fought battles, did terrible things. But what about emperors whose reigns weren't filled with drama or huge wars? What about the ones who just kept things running, day after day? Sometimes, an emperor's most powerful act isn't conquering new lands or building great monuments. True strength often means preventing disaster. It means working behind the scenes to keep peace, ensure enough food, keeping millions of lives stable. They might not have exciting stories. Their story is often one of quiet, steady leadership. Think about Antoninus Pius. He reigned for over 20 years, from 138 to 161 AD. His time is often called Rome's most peaceful and rich period. He launched no huge wars, murdered no rivals. He just governed. He focused on making life better for Romans, fixing roads, helping orphans, keeping the empire strong from within. It's like the quiet person in your group project who makes sure everyone does their part, checks facts, keeps the team organized. They might not be the loudest, but without them, everything falls apart. Their steady effort creates success. Antoninus Pius was like that for Rome. His power wasn't showy. It was the strong, deep power of consistent care. And that's why his name might not be as famous. We often remember chaos, heroes, or villains. But sometimes, the greatest help is just to ensure calm, hold things together, let people live without fear. It reminds us that strength can look many ways. Sometimes the most important work is done without a shout, quietly keeping the world turning, one steady moment. He had a chance, but blew it. Have you ever felt that deep pit in your stomach? The one where you had a perfect shot at something, and you just blew it. Even powerful people felt this. Roman emperors, like rock stars, held immense power. They had a chance to truly change their world. But power doesn't always mean wisdom. It just gives you the biggest stage. Imagine an emperor, new on the throne. People are hopeful. The empire is strong. He has advisors, armies, money. The future looks bright. He could build peace, fair laws, help his people, and be remembered as great. But then, slowly, bad choices begin. Maybe it's pride, fear, or just not caring enough. He stops listening, making selfish decisions. That bright future fades, choice by choice. It's like being the best player on a basketball team. You have the ball, the clock is running out. You have an open shot to win. Everyone is watching, but you get distracted. You try a needless move. You lose the ball. The buzzer sounds, game over. You had the chance, the skill, the moment, but you didn't make it count. That what-if feeling really stings. This isn't just about emperors. It's about how our choices ripple out. Every day, we face crossroads. We have chances to be kind, work hard, learn. Sometimes, we miss them. We pick an easier path, or let a good moment slip away. It makes us think about the weight of each decision. What future did we lose because we weren't ready or didn't value the chance? the emperor who was more of a problem. Have you ever thought about what happens when the leader, meant to guide everyone, becomes the biggest challenge? Strange idea, isn't it? Usually, we look to those in charge to solve problems, to make things better. But sometimes, the person at the top actually is the problem. And this happened in ancient Rome more than once. One emperor truly fits this description, Caligula. For centuries, people have spoken about him with a confused sadness. He wasn't just a bad leader because he made poor decisions or wasn't smart enough. No, Caligula seemed to be a problem because of who he was. He was known for being unpredictable, cruel, and sometimes a little bit mad. Imagine if your principal, instead of leading the school, suddenly made rules just to annoy students, or tore down parts of the building for no reason. How would the school feel? Everything would become uncertain, even scary. Caligula's reign was short, but it felt like a storm. He spent vast amounts of money on wild parties, insulted senators, and even tried to make his horse a consul, which was like a super important government job. Think about that. It wasn't just silly. It showed a deep disrespect for the traditions and the serious work of governing. His actions weren't just personal quirks, they shook the entire empire. When the person in power doesn't care about their role, or worse, uses it to cause chaos, everyone suffers. It's like when the main character in a video game glitches out and starts attacking their own team. The whole game breaks down, and so, Caligula's story reminds us of something important. True power isn't just about having authority. It's about how you use that authority, and the person you become while holding it. A leader's character, their basic sense of right and wrong, can be as crucial as their strength or cleverness. Sometimes, the greatest harm isn't from outside enemies, but from within. When leadership itself goes astray, the one who held on, barely. Have you ever felt like you were just barely holding on, clinging to the edge, fingers slipping, but somehow, you don't let go? Now imagine that feeling, but instead of a test or a game, it's the Roman Empire you're trying to keep from falling apart. That's the story of some emperors, not the ones who won great battles, or built amazing cities, or even the terrible tyrants everyone remembers. These are the ones who simply endured. They weren't always brilliant or strong. Sometimes, they were just ordinary people thrust into an impossible job. The Roman Empire was a giant, heavy thing, full of enemies outside its borders and plots within its walls. It was like trying to steer a huge, old ship through a storm with a leaky hull and a crew that sometimes wanted to mutiny. For these emperors, every day was a struggle to keep the ship afloat, to prevent total disaster. Here's the thing. It takes a certain stubbornness to just refuse to give up, even when all logic says you should. Think about a tiny sapling, a young tree, growing in a crack in a concrete sidewalk. The sun beats down, the wind whips it, and there's hardly any soil or water. Most would just wither, but some, somehow, find a way to twist and grow, sending roots deep, just enough to survive. They don't become grand oak trees, but they persist. They hold on. These emperors often didn't leave a glorious legacy. Their reigns were marked by simply surviving, dodging assassination attempts, pushing back an invading army, or just keeping the economy from completely crashing. Their story isn't about triumph. It's about not failing. It's about that quiet, almost invisible strength found in sheer determination, in the refusal to let go, even when the world feels like it's trying to pry your fingers open. It makes you wonder, sometimes, if just holding on is, in its own way, a kind of powerful victory. A mixed bag of decisions. Have you ever made a choice that felt completely right at the time, but then led to some unexpected problems later on? Or maybe a really tough decision that turned out to have both good and bad sides, all mixed together. Here's the thing. Roman emperors faced this kind of challenge every single day, but on a massive scale. Their decisions were rarely simple, clear-cut choices between good and evil. Instead, they were often a true mixed bag, like reaching into a grab bag and pulling out both a sparkling jewel and a rough stone dot. No emperor was just one thing, a hero or a villain through and through. Many of them genuinely tried to do what was best for Rome, to protect its people or make it stronger. But even their best intentions could sometimes lead to terrible results. And sometimes, a harsh decision that seemed awful at first might actually bring some long-term good. Think about the heavy weight of a crown. Every single choice, from starting a new war to deciding who would lead an army, affected millions of lives. They might decide to expand the empire, which could bring new land and wealth. but also start bloody, painful wars and create new enemies. It was a complicated dance of power and unintended effects. It's kind of like when you're studying for a big, important test. You decide to stay up really late, maybe until midnight, to cram every last detail into your brain. The good part, you might totally ace the test the next morning, feeling proud of your score. But here's the problem. You're probably exhausted, maybe grumpy, and can't focus on anything else for the rest of the day, or even the whole next week. One decision, staying up late, leads to two very different outcomes, good and bad. The emperor's choices were just like that, but with armies and entire cities hanging in the balance, not just a grey dot. So, when we look back at these ancient rulers, it's not always about isolating labeling them as perfect heroes or terrible villains. It's about trying to understand that life, even for someone with ultimate power, is messy and full of difficult choices. It's about seeing the threads of good and bad woven tightly together in nearly every major decision they made. It reminds us that true power means carrying the weight of all those mixed outcomes. And maybe it helps us be a little more understanding of our own mixed bags of decisions too. He kept things running, just not well. Have you ever tried your hardest at something, maybe a sport or a game, and even though you didn't completely mess up, you just didn't win, or perhaps you felt like you were just barely keeping up, always a step behind? That feeling is a little like what we see with some Roman emperors. They weren't terrible, not really. They didn't burn down Rome or declare themselves a god and act completely wild. But here's the thing, they didn't make things better either. They simply kept the massive, complicated machinery of the Roman Empire turning, sometimes slowly, sometimes with a lot of creaks and groans. Think about it like an old car that's seen better days. It still drives, and it gets you where you need to go. But the engine rattles, the brakes sometimes squeal, and you know deep down it's probably going to need a big repair soon. These emperors often inherited an empire already full of cracks and worn-out parts. Their daily job felt less like leading a powerful nation into new greatness, and more like managing a slow, quiet decline. It's a heavy burden to be in charge when things are just okay but not truly good, and you sense in your heart there should be so much more. This leadership isn't about grand visions. It's about holding on, watching strength slowly fade. Imagine you're part of a school club, and a new president takes over. They show up to meetings, they follow the rules, and the club doesn't fall apart. But they don't bring new ideas, get more members, or plan exciting events. The club just exists. It's not a disaster, but it's certainly not thriving. It's just there, a place where things happen, but without much heart or real forward movement. There's a quiet, almost sad understanding in that kind of leadership. It's the opposite of inspiration, the opposite of true growth. It's doing just enough to survive, but never enough to truly shine or build something lasting. And over time, even just enough can wear a whole empire down, piece by piece. It makes you really wonder, what does it truly mean to lead, when simply keeping things from getting worse becomes your biggest achievement? Is simply not failing enough to make a real difference? Or do we always need more from those who hold power? Not the worst, but far from the best. Have you ever thought about what it means to be average? Not bad, but not amazing either. When we look at Roman emperors, we often see the terrible ones, like Nero, who played music while Rome burned. And then there are the heroes, like Augustus, but most emperors lived in the middle. They weren't monsters or miracle workers. They just ... ruled. This is for emperors who didn't ruin Rome, but didn't lift it to new heights. Imagine a school project. You don't fail it, but you also don't get an A+. You do the work, understand the topic, and hand it in. The project is just okay. The Roman Empire under these rulers was a bit like that. Things kept moving. The army fought, taxes were collected, and buildings went up. But there wasn't that spark, grand vision, or deep commitment that truly changes things for the better. It's like being a reliable, not spectacular, player on a sports team. You show up, play your position, and don't make huge mistakes. Sometimes you even do something good, but you're not the one everyone remembers. You're not the one who makes the impossible shot or scores the winning goal. These emperors kept the ball in play. They tried, often with good intentions, but they lacked the talent, cunning, or sheer will that separates the great from the merely acceptable. And that's why it matters. It reminds us, leadership isn't always about dramatic highs and lows. Sometimes, it's about quiet, steady effort, or the lack of it, that just maintains things, It shows us the heavy weight of responsibility, even when you're not a legend. It's a quiet reminder of human limits. Even with immense power, sometimes good enough is all you get, and sometimes that's both a comfort and a deep, soft disappointment. The emperor who just maintained the status quo. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be in charge, but your biggest goal isn't to change the world, but simply to keep it from falling apart? We often hear about the emperors who built great empires or started terrible wars, but what about the ones who simply kept things going? This is where we talk about the idea of the status quo. It's a fancy way of saying the way things are right now. So, an emperor who maintained the status quo was someone who made sure things stayed pretty much the same. They didn't conquer new lands, build magnificent new cities, or invent groundbreaking new laws. Their reign wasn't filled with dramatic victories or crushing defeats. Instead, it was a time of quiet stability. Imagine a huge, complicated machine, like a giant clock. Some people are amazing at building new clocks, and others are good at smashing them. But some people, their job is just to make sure that old clock keeps ticking reliably. They oil the gears, check the springs, and make sure nothing breaks. It's not a flashy job. No one cheers for the clock maintenance person. But if they stopped, if they didn't do their quiet, steady work, the whole thing would eventually fall apart. That's a bit like these emperors. They saw the Roman Empire, this massive, complex thing, and their main goal was to prevent it from collapsing. They faced daily struggles with inflation, border skirmishes, and keeping everyone fed and happy. Their efforts might seem less exciting than a general leading an army, but their quiet dedication was essential. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to create something new, but to painstakingly preserve what exists. It's a deep, sometimes heavy, responsibility, this task of simply holding on. Often, these are the leaders whose silent strength goes almost completely unnoticed. A brief moment of power, not glory. Have you ever wondered if just having a powerful title means you've done something truly great? For many Roman emperors, their time as ruler was exactly like that. They held immense power, enough to shape the world with a single command. But here's the thing. Power alone often doesn't lead to true glory. Glory means being remembered with honor, leaving a lasting positive mark on history. It's about earning respect, not just demanding it. Many emperors found themselves on the throne, wearing rich purple robes, with armies and vast lands. Yet, for some, their rule was fleeting, like a fading whisper. They sat in the powerful seat, but their impact felt hollow, leaving little behind except a name in a book. With no great deeds. Think about being chosen as a team captain. You have the official power, but if you don't lead well, or only focus on yourself, people won't remember you as a great leader. You had a brief moment of power, but didn't earn lasting respect or glory. That's how it was for some Roman rulers. They grasped the world in their hands, but their reign was a quick flash, a temporary light fading without illuminating anything meaningful. They simply occupied Earth's most powerful seat for a moment, too short or unremarkable to truly matter. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the real value of power if it doesn't lead to something lasting and good? True greatness isn't just about the position, it's about the purpose you find, and the genuine difference you make. Real glory is earned, not given. It comes from how you serve. He tried to fix Rome. Have you ever felt that ache when something important starts to fall apart? Maybe it's a friendship, a team, or a project you really care about. You feel this strong pull to fix what's broken. That's a bit how some Roman emperors felt. Standing at the top, they looked down at their enormous empire. Rome, seeing it struggle. This was no small fix. Rome was huge, a web of people and places, tangled with deep problems. Unfairness, poverty, and power-hungry leaders tore it apart. It was like an ancient machine, groaning, close to breaking. One emperor saw this coming. He wasn't perfect, but felt the heavy weight of it all. He thought, I have to try. So, he did. He brought new ideas, made new rules, and tried to change how people acted. Think about fixing a big problem in a school group project. Not everyone agrees, or some don't want to listen. You try your best, but aligning everyone is hard when problems are centuries old. He tried to mend old issues in just a few years. Here's the thing. Even with good intentions and power, fixing something so vast and old goes only so far. Maybe he made things a little better, for a while. But Rome's deeper issues were like a big river. You can build a wall, but water still finds new paths. It's a quiet, sad truth. Some wounds run too deep. strongest efforts might only slow down what's coming, leaving echoes of what couldn't be saved. It reminds us, even the most powerful face forces bigger than themselves. The guy who faced big challenges. Have you ever felt like the weight of the world was on your shoulders? Like a moment where everything depended on you? Imagine being an emperor of Rome. It wasn't just fancy robes and endless feasts. For many, the job meant staring down challenges that would make most people crumble. These rulers faced enormous problems, almost every day. Think about keeping a massive empire together. It stretched across so many different lands, with so many kinds of people, all with their own needs. There were constant wars, enemies always trying to break through borders. Sometimes, worse, rebellion sparked inside Rome itself. And then there were terrible plagues or famine, wiping out towns. Every decision an emperor made could mean life or death for thousands. They felt this incredibly heavy burden, a pressure most of us can barely imagine. It's a bit like being the captain of a gigantic ship caught in a relentless storm. You have to steer through massive waves, fix things, keep the crew calm, and desperately hope you don't sink. But here's the thing. This ship is an entire civilization, and the storm is pure chaos. So, when we consider these emperors who faced such monumental challenges, we see beyond just power or grand statues. We see immense courage, yes, but also a deep, perhaps lonely, resilience. It makes you wonder what true strength really is. Is it just about always winning, or is it about how you carry the heavy load, even when it feels impossible? It's a quiet testament to the human spirit, trying to hold things together when the world feels like it's falling apart. And sometimes, that's the most powerful story of all. When an emperor was just okay. Have you ever thought about the emperors who weren't super famous heroes or terrible villains? The ones we don't always read about in thrilling stories. We often focus on the brightest stars, or the darkest shadows. But what about the emperors who were just, oh, here's the thing. Just okay doesn't sound very exciting, does it? But for millions in the vast Roman Empire, an okay emperor could mean everything. It meant the world didn't fall apart. Armies didn't always win huge battles, but they didn't always lose them either. People could go to sleep without fearing immediate disaster, and without expecting some grand new age of peace. Their rule was often quiet and steady. These emperors weren't known for amazing victories or terrible cruelty. They simply kept the machine running. Imagine a long car trip. You need a driver who gets you safely from point A to point B. They don't have to break speed records or perform fancy turns. They just need to stay on the road, follow the rules, and make sure everyone arrives. That's what an okay emperor did. They maintained order, managed money, and kept borders relatively safe. Their rule was sometimes a little bit boring, but here's why that matters deeply. In a world of big egos and constant danger, sometimes the greatest gift a leader can give is stability. Not making things worse is, in its own way, a huge achievement. It meant fewer wars, fewer famines, and fewer sudden changes that could ruin people's lives. It shows us true strength isn't always about being loud or dramatic. Sometimes, it's about the quiet, steady work of just keeping things together, day after day. It's a reminder that even in power, most people are simply trying to do their best to hold steady for a while. His legacy is a bit blurry. Have you ever tried to remember a dream from last night, but some parts are just ... fuzzy? You know that feeling. You recall the detail here, a moment there, but the full picture just won't come into focus. Well, sometimes, history is a lot like that, especially when we look at certain Roman emperors. Their stories, their reigns, their whole lives, they feel a bit blurry to us now, like an old photograph faded by time. Here's the thing about trying to understand someone who lived thousands of years ago. We rely on what was written down, and often, those records are incomplete. Imagine if your entire life story was only told through a few old texts, written by people who loved you, or by people who really didn't. It's tough to get a clear, fair sense of who that person truly was, right? Scrolls got lost, fires happened, or maybe, nobody important thought to write much about a specific emperor. So, we're left with gaps, with guesswork. Think about looking at a really old family photo. It's grainy, some faces aren't clear, and you have to guess what everyone was feeling or doing. You can see the outlines, but the sharp details, the emotions in their eyes, they're just not there. That's a bit like trying to understand an emperor whose legacy is blurry. We see the big events, the names, but the reasons why they acted, their true intentions, the everyday choices that shaped them, those parts are missing, and that's okay. it teaches us something important about history itself. Not every story has a clean beginning, middle, and end that we can fully grasp. Sometimes, the most powerful lesson is realizing that the past is messy, full of shadows and silence. It reminds us to be patient, to be humble, and to accept that some mysteries might just stay mysteries. It shows us that even with all our efforts, some lives remain whispers on the wind, leaving us to wonder and connect the dots as best we can. A leader who had some good ideas, but ... Have you ever tried your absolute best at something, poured your heart into it, only for it to fall apart anyway? Maybe your intentions were good, your plan clear, but it just didn't work out. It's a crushing feeling, isn't it? To see hopes fade, not because you were bad, but because life is complicated. Well, that feeling wasn't new for some Roman emperors. Not every leader on our list was a monster or a fool. Some were brilliant, even kind, with big ideas to fix Rome's many problems. They saw the poverty, the struggles, and wanted to make things better. They planned huge projects, dreaming of a peaceful empire, believing their vision would change everything. But here's the thing about leading an entire world. Rome was vast. It was like steering a colossal ship through a raging storm, with a fighting crew and hidden icebergs. An emperor's good intentions, even smart ideas, could crash against the harsh realities of politics, war, famine, or bad luck. The world often had its own plans, ignoring the best-laid ones. Think about a science fair project. You spend weeks researching, designing a clever experiment, convinced it will prove your hypothesis. You follow every step, but then, something unexpected happens. Equipment malfunctions, samples react differently, or your data doesn't show what you expected. Your idea was solid, your huge effort, but the outcome wasn't what you hoped. It's not a failure of character, but a collision with reality. And that's why this type of leader is so fascinating and a little heartbreaking. To sit on the throne, with all that power, and genuinely try to do good, only to watch your efforts turn to dust or cause unintended harm. History judges by results, which is fair, but sometimes we can feel empathy for those who reached for greatness with good hearts, only to find the world too stubborn, chaotic, or cruel for their visions to fully bloom. It's a sad wisdom. Even pure intentions can crumble under immense pressure. He gave Rome a little stability. Have you ever felt like everything around you was just too much, like too many things were happening at once, and nobody knew what to do next? That's a bit like how Rome felt during some very rough times. Imagine years of rulers coming and going, often violently. People lived in fear, never sure what tomorrow would bring. It must have been exhausting, like constantly walking on eggshells, never truly feeling safe. But then, sometimes, one person steps forward, not a superhero, not someone who fixes absolutely everything overnight, but someone who just calms the waters a bit. He comes in, and instead of adding to the chaos, he tries to make sense of things, to bring a quiet order. He puts some rules in place, or he makes a decision that helps things settle down, even if just for a little while. This isn't about grand victories or changing the world in a flash. It's about finding a moment of quiet in a storm. Here's the thing, stability, even a little bit, is a powerful gift. Think about when your classroom is really loud and everyone is talking over each other. It's hard to focus, right? Your brain feels fuzzy. But then, if the teacher just asks for quiet and everyone settles down, even for a few minutes, you can finally hear yourself think. That small shift, that little bit of order, really changes everything. You can breathe deeply. You can finally understand what's happening. For Rome, a leader who brought just a touch of stability was like that. He might not have been perfect, and his decisions might not have lasted forever. But for a time, he offered a pause. He let people believe, even for a precious moment, that things could be steady again. And that matters so much. Because sometimes, when the world feels like it's spinning too fast, the greatest power isn't in making it spin faster, but in helping it slow down. It's a quiet strength. The power of making things feel just a little bit safer. The emperor who made a few good choices. Have you ever thought about how complicated people can be? How someone might not always be the best, but then they do something truly good, something that really helps. It's easy to label historical figures as either a hero or a villain, but history, like our own lives, is full of many different shades. Here's the thing with Roman emperors. Some were truly terrible, causing great pain and suffering. But even among those who largely struggled, there were moments where they made a smart choice a decision that actually benefited the Roman people or brought a flicker of stability to a troubled time. These weren't grand changes. Instead, they were often small, but very important acts of wisdom. Imagine the huge pressure on an emperor. So much power, their mistakes could hurt millions. Even if their reign was full of problems, a clear thought, a good idea, could break through. Think of it like this. Maybe you have a strict teacher, or someone in your family who often seems grumpy, but then, one day, that person gives you the best advice, or does something unexpectedly kind that makes your day. That one good act, even if surrounded by less positive things, still matters. It still leaves a mark. For Rome, these good choices, even from a flawed emperor, could mean the difference between a city starving and a city fed, or between open war and a brief peace. They were like small, steady lights in a very dark period. It shows us that people are rarely just one thing, not completely good or completely bad. We learn that even leaders who struggled could still, in certain moments, choose well. And that reminds us to look for the good, even when it's hidden, and to understand that everyone, even the most powerful, holds a mix of intentions and actions. Building a little, breaking a little, breaking a little. Have you ever thought about how every choice we make, big or small, often does two things at once? It creates something new, yes, but sometimes it also changes or takes away something old. When we look at the Roman emperors, this idea truly shines. These leaders ruled a massive empire, and their decisions had huge impacts. It's easy to think of emperors as either good or bad, but history, like life, is rarely that simple. An emperor might build amazing new aqueducts, bringing fresh water to millions, a clear building act. But to do that, maybe they raised taxes sky high, causing hardship, or perhaps they tore down older neighborhoods to make way for grand new structures, breaking a part of the city's past. Think about a new park being built in your town. It's wonderful, right? Green space, playgrounds, places to relax. That's a clear act of building something good for the community. But maybe to make that park, a beloved old community garden had to be moved, or some mature trees were cut down, or perhaps the money for the park meant less money for school repairs that year. It's not that the park is bad, but every gain often comes with some kind of loss, some kind of shift. This is the hidden truth of power and change. Every emperor, no matter how brilliant or how cruel, was always in this dance. They'd strengthen the army, but perhaps at the cost of civil liberties. They'd bring peace to one border, only to start a new conflict somewhere else. It wasn't always on purpose, and it wasn't always clear at the time. Their actions created ripples, some good, some challenging, spreading far beyond their reign. So, when we think about their legacies, we need to remember this delicate balance. What was gained, and what, perhaps unknowingly, was lost or changed. It's a quiet reminder that every act leaves a mark, seen and unseen. Not a disaster, but no hero either. Have you ever learned about someone in history, where things weren't terrible, but also not amazing? It's like that with some Roman emperors. We often look for the great heroes who built amazing things, or won impossible wars. We also remember the villains, the cruel rulers who brought their empire down. But many emperors fell somewhere in the middle. They weren't a huge disaster, causing ruin and chaos. But they certainly weren't the shining hero who saved the day, or changed the world forever. They just ruled. This middle ground is important to understand. It shows us that most of life, even for powerful Roman emperors, isn't about extreme highs or lows. It's about the daily grind. They made decisions that might keep things stable, or just stop them from getting worse. These emperors often inherited problems. They tried to fix some, and maybe even created a few new ones by accident. Their time in power was a mix of small wins and quiet struggles. They kept the machine running, even if it wasn't always smooth. Think about a big group project at school. You have people who do amazing work, and some who cause problems. But then, there are the others, the majority. They show up, they do their parts. They turn things in on time, making sure the project gets finished. They're not the star student everyone praises, but they also aren't the reason the project fails. They're just reliable. Their contribution is key, even if it isn't flashy. And that's a powerful lesson. Not every story needs a hero or a villain. Sometimes, the most common story is about someone who just does their best. They navigate challenges. They leave things not much better, but also not much worse. It reminds us that steady hands, even ordinary ones, keep the world turning. There's a quiet strength in just making it through, in holding things together. That kind of leadership, while maybe not sung about, is a huge part of history. The guy who did his job, mostly. Have you ever thought about what it means to just ... do your job, not be a hero, not a villain, but simply show up and handle things? In the wild, dramatic story of Roman emperors, some were madmen, others built empires, but there were also emperors who just existed. They weren't legends for greatness or monsters for cruelty. They held the reins, mostly kept the ship afloat, then passed it on. It's easy to focus on the extremes, isn't it? The emperors who killed their families or expanded Rome's borders, but sometimes the real story is in the quiet hum of stability. Imagine being in charge of a vast empire, a world bigger than you could truly grasp, with millions of lives hanging on your decisions. The pressure must have been crushing. For some, the greatest achievement wasn't conquering new territory, but simply not letting everything fall apart. They didn't try to be a blazing sun, but more like a steady moon, reflecting enough light to guide, even if it wasn't their own. Think about a time you had a big responsibility, maybe a school project or caring for a younger sibling. You weren't aiming for a Nobel Prize. You just needed to make sure it got done, and done reasonably well. You avoided major mistakes. You kept things running smoothly. That often is a silent victory. It's the effort of keeping peace, collecting taxes, ensuring legions were fed, and roads were safe. It's a kind of quiet courage. So, when we look back at these emperors, maybe the ones who did their job mostly teach us something important. They show us that sometimes simply enduring, simply maintaining, can be its own kind of power. It's the silent, often unthanked work that holds the world together, day after day, year after year. It reminds us that not every mark left on history needs to be dramatic or grand. Sometimes, it's the gentle hand that keeps the scales balanced. Rome saw little peace under him. Have you ever just wanted things to be quiet for a while? Not silent, but just a steady hum, without constant worry or big, scary changes. Imagine that feeling, but for an entire empire that had seen years of fierce battles, plots, and leaders coming and going like tides. People were tired. They longed for a moment to simply breathe. And then there was Hadrian. He became emperor not long after a time of great expansion, when Rome was always trying to grab more land. But Hadrian, he saw things differently. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a thinker, an artist, a traveler. And here's the thing. He understood that Rome didn't need to get bigger. It needed to get stronger from the inside. Think about your own room. Maybe it's full of toys, books, and clothes. Sometimes, the best way to make your room better isn't to buy more stuff, but to organize what you already have, to put things away, clean up, and make sure everything has its place. That's kind of what Hadrian did for Rome. Instead of pushing its armies further into unknown lands, he focused on building up the empire they already had. He traveled for years, seeing everything with his own eyes. He built temples, improved cities, and made sure the army was disciplined but also well cared for. Most famously, he built Hadrian's Wall across northern Britain. This wasn't a wall to conquer new lands, but a clear, strong line to protect what Rome already held. It was like saying, "This is our boundary. Here, we can be safe." For a generation, this brought a rare sense of calm. Families could plant their fields without fear of constant war. Merchants could trade without roads being suddenly unsafe. Life wasn't perfect, of course. It never is. But there was a steady rhythm. There was a feeling that tomorrow would likely be much like today. And that was a comfort many Romans hadn't known for a long time. It shows us that true strength isn't always about how much you can take, but sometimes how well you can protect what you cherish. It's about finding peace and stability. His rule wasn't perfect, but it helped him. You ever thought about how incredibly hard it must be to lead? To have so many people depending on your choices, knowing every decision could change lives, for better or worse. When we look back at Roman emperors, it's easy to see their mistakes, their bad tempers, their selfish acts. But here's the thing. Even deeply flawed people, those with big personal problems, sometimes did something truly important. Something that greatly helped Rome. Think about it like this. Imagine you're working on a big science project, like building a model of the solar system. Maybe one team member isn't perfect. They might be a bit messy, or forget a small detail sometimes. The project might have a few wobbly planets or mismatched colors. But if the model still works in the end, and you learn something amazing from it, that person's help was vital. The goal was met. despite those small bumps along the way. That's a bit like certain emperors. They might have been harsh, or made choices that hurt some people. They weren't always popular, but through all that, their actions sometimes laid the groundwork for future peace. Or they built roads connecting distant lands. Or they kept invaders out when Rome was truly in danger. They weren't always the kindest or wisest, but their presence, their drive, even their stubbornness pushed things forward. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Can good come from a place that isn't entirely good itself? Maybe the lesson isn't about finding perfect heroes in history. Perfect people rarely exist. Instead, it's about understanding that even when leaders stumble, their lasting impact can still guide nations, still offer a path for those who follow. Good can grow in unexpected places, even from complicated actions. Their imperfections were part of their story, but so was the help they gave. The emperor who kept things from falling apart. Have you ever watched something truly precious wobble, just about to crash? Maybe a sandcastle slowly giving way to the tide. That feeling of fear, knowing it could all tumble down. Rome, at a critical moment, felt exactly like that. But it wasn't it was an entire empire, millions of lives. For many years, Rome had been tearing itself apart. Generals fought each other, friends became enemies. This was a time of endless civil wars, where the once mighty republic was shattered. Imagine living through that, never knowing if your town was safe, or if a new battle would erupt tomorrow. But here's the thing. One emperor stepped in when everything felt like it was truly crumbling. His name was Augustus. He didn't just win battles. He patiently, smartly, pieced Rome back together. Think about a complex machine, like a bicycle. If a crucial part breaks, the whole bike stops. Rome was like that broken bicycle, losing its ability to move forward. Augustus was like the skilled mechanic. He didn't just fix obvious damage. He redesigned the internal workings, strengthening weak spots, making sure all gears turned smoothly. He used clever thinking, calm leadership, and a deep understanding of what people desperately needed after years of conflict. Peace. He brought deep stability, a quiet strength that allowed people to finally breathe. His reign started the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, which lasted a very long time. This shows us that true power isn't always about conquering new lands or winning every fight. Sometimes, the greatest power is simply holding things steady. It's about creating a calm space where growth can happen, where people feel safe enough to build, learn, and hope. It's about preventing the complete fall, so life can truly flourish. And that's a power that quietly changes everything. A step forward, even if small. Have you ever felt like a problem was just too big to solve? Maybe a huge project at school, or a situation that felt overwhelming. It's easy to think that if you can't fix everything all at once, then what's the point? But here's the thing about life, and especially about leading a massive empire like Rome. Sometimes, the greatest courage isn't found in a grand victory, but in just making things a little bit better, even if only for a short while. Imagine an emperor inheriting a Rome that's crumbling, wars on every border, people starving, rebellions brewing. It's a mess. He can't magically make it all perfect. No one could. But what if he manages to secure enough grain to feed one city for a month? Or signs a temporary peace treaty that saves thousands of lives? Or maybe he just keeps the government from completely falling apart for another year. These aren't glorious triumphs that get statues built. They are small, often unseen efforts. Think about learning to play a musical instrument. When you first start, it sounds, well, not great. You don't suddenly play a symphony. Instead, you spend hours just trying to get one note right, or smooth out one chord. And that's okay. Each time you practice, even if you only improve a tiny bit, you've taken a step forward. It might not feel like much in the moment, but all those small steps add up. For some Roman emperors, their best wasn't about building new wonders or conquering vast lands. It was about facing immense pressure and just trying to lessen the pain, to mend one small crack in a collapsing wall. It's a quiet kind of strength, this idea that even when perfection is impossible, making things less bad still matters. And that's why it matters, because sometimes, simply holding on, or easing a burden, is the truest act of leadership, a tiny flicker of hope against the dark. He understood some of Rome's needs. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to lead? Not just to give orders, but to understand. Imagine a Roman emperor, powerful beyond belief. Was that power enough? Some emperors, hidden in history, seemed to grasp something more. They looked past the grand parades and cheering crowds. They felt Rome's heartbeat, its aches and quiet worries. Here's the thing. Rome wasn't just marble and legions. It was millions of people. Farmers in distant fields, merchants in markets, families struggling in crowded apartments. Each day, they faced challenges. They worried about food, safety, and a fair chance. A truly insightful emperor didn't just rule over these people. They ruled for them by seeing their daily struggles. Think of it like this. Your school principal doesn't just make rules. The best ones walk the hallways, talk to students, listen to teachers. They might notice if cafeteria food isn't great, or if some students feel left out. They understand a school isn't just classrooms. It's a community of feelings and experiences. And because they see those smaller, often invisible needs, they can make changes that truly help everyone. This emperor, in our minds, might have realized the stable food supply was more important than another gladiator game. Maybe they saw unfair taxes crushing families, even if the treasury looked full. Or perhaps they understood that belonging and justice were just as vital as winning a battle. It's a deep kind of wisdom, isn't it? To look beyond obvious strength and truly see a vast empire's quiet needs. That empathy, that quiet knowing, is what makes a leader truly connect and truly lead. It's not about being the strongest, but about being the most understanding. The leader who tried his best. Have you ever felt like you were trying your absolute best, pouring all your energy into something, but the odds were just stacked too high against you? That feeling, that heavy weight of effort, even when failure seems close, is something some Roman emperors knew well. Not every emperor could win or make Rome perfect. Some inherited a mess so big, it felt almost impossible to fix. These weren't always the strongest or most famous emperors. They didn't lead grand armies or build massive monuments. Their power wasn't in conquering, but in enduring. Their strength was in the quiet, lonely struggle to hold things together when everything was falling apart. They tried to be good when it felt pointless. They tried to fix what was beyond one person's repair. Here's the thing. Imagine you're on a sports team, down by a lot of points. The game is almost over, and you know you probably can't win. But do you just give up? Or do you keep playing your hardest, running, passing, defending, until that final whistle blows? That unyielding effort, even when the outcome seems decided, that's what we mean here. It's about dignity. It's about refusing to let despair win, even if you can't conquer the whole problem. Sometimes, true leadership isn't just about the victories we achieve. It's about the battles we fight with honor, even the ones we can't possibly win. It's about the courage to stand firm against a strong tide, and to simply try your very best. It reminds us that even when things seem hopeless, giving our best effort is a powerful act of hope itself. And that's why it matters. Bringing a little order to the empire. Have you ever woken up, and for some reason, everything just feels chaotic, like your backpack is upside down, your plans are cancelled, and nothing seems to make sense? Now, imagine that feeling, but stretched across an entire empire, with millions of people. That's what it was like for many in the Roman world, when things started to unravel. When leaders were weak, or battles raged, life wasn't just messy, it became truly unpredictable and scary. It wasn't just small problems, it was a constant, gnawing worry about tomorrow. And here's the thing, people desperately needed someone to bring back order, not just new laws, but a feeling of safety, a sense that their world wouldn't collapse around them. They hoped for a leader who could somehow untangle the mess of wars, money troubles, and rivalries. It was a deep, human cry for security, for a predictable tomorrow when food would be available and homes would be safe. Think about a big school project, maybe putting on a play. If the director leaves, and no one knows their lines, their cues, or even what scene comes next, it would be a disaster, right? Everyone would be confused, stressed, and the whole play would fall apart. But when a strong director steps in, giving clear instructions, practicing tirelessly, everything starts to flow. There's a rhythm, a purpose, and suddenly, it all feels manageable. This is what an emperor was often asked to do, to be that director, that calming presence for millions. They had to untangle disputes, protect vast borders, make sure food arrived in cities, and give people hope. It wasn't just about showing off power. It was about trying to soothe the fears of millions of people. It was an enormous weight to carry, trying to bring a quiet comfort when everything else felt too loud. Even today, we look for that sense of order in our own lives, in our communities. We want to believe that someone, somewhere, is trying to make things right, to bring peace to the world's noisy corners. It's a reminder that leadership, at its core, often tries to offer a kind of steady hand when everything else feels wild and uncertain. The emperor who built a few good things. Have you ever thought about how complicated people can be? How someone might do some truly awful things, but also create something beautiful or useful that lasts for centuries. It's a strange idea, but it's real, especially when we look at history. Here's the thing about some Roman emperors. They weren't always good men. Many were cruel, selfish, and made terrible choices that hurt a lot of people. But sometimes, almost by accident, or maybe because they wanted to show off, they also built a few good things. Imagine Rome, this huge, bustling city. It needed roads, water, places for people to gather. Even if an emperor was a tyrant, he might still order the construction of an aqueduct to bring fresh water to the city, or maybe a grand bathhouse, a place where everyone, rich or poor, could go to wash and socialize. He might have started these projects to boost his own image, to make himself seem powerful and generous. His heart might have been cold, but the stone and mortar he commanded still stood, still served the people. It's a bit like a storm. A storm can bring destruction, knock down trees, and cause a lot of fear. But sometimes, after the storm passes, it leaves behind something unexpected, like clearing out old debris that was blocking a path, or filling a dry riverbed. The overall experience was rough, but a small, useful change happened to Dot. When we look back at these emperors, it's not always about labeling them simply good or bad. It's about seeing the full picture. A man might be remembered for his harsh rule and his terrible decisions, but he might also be quietly remembered by the lasting archway still standing, or the clean water still flowing from the fountains he built. It teaches us that even in the midst of darkness, useful things can be created, and sometimes, those creations quietly make life a little better for countless people, long after the hands that ordered them are gone. It's a quiet reminder of how complex our world, and the people in it, truly are. A fair ruler. Most of the time, what does it truly mean to be fair? We all think we know, right? Like when you share snacks equally with a friend, or a teacher gives everyone the same time for a test. But what if you're an emperor, ruling millions of people? Imagine that. Wait, it's not just about sharing candy then. It's deciding who gets food, who pays taxes, who lives in peace, and who goes to war. This immense power rested solely on one person's shoulders. For Roman emperors, fair was a complex storm. They had to keep powerful senators happy, the restless army loyal, and the vast population from rebelling. Sometimes, being fair to one group meant seeming unfair to another. Maybe a new tax was needed to fund essential projects, but it felt heavy to the poor. Or a general was punished for a mistake, even if he was a popular hero. It wasn't simple good versus bad. It was often hard choice versus harder choice. Think about a coach picking a team for a big game. They choose who plays, who sits on the bench. Each player believes they deserve a spot. The coach isn't trying to be mean. They're picking the best team to win, for the good of everyone. But to the player who doesn't get to start, it might feel deeply unfair, like their hard work wasn't seen. That's a tiny echo of the pressure a Roman emperor felt, magnified 1,000,000 times. Their decisions impacted entire lives, entire futures. So when we look back at these powerful figures, we see that being fair wasn't a constant, easy state. It was a daily battle, a constant balancing act. Sometimes they succeeded, showing real justice and wisdom. Other times, they stumbled, swayed by fear or ambition, and their fairness cracked. It reminds us that even with immense power, the human heart still grapples with what's right, and that true fairness remains a beautiful, difficult goal for all of us, no matter our role. He stabilized Rome after tough times. Have you ever felt like everything around you was just too much, like things were a mess, and nobody knew what to do next? That's kind of how Rome felt during some very rough years. Imagine an empire, the biggest in the world at the time, but inside it was breaking apart. Leaders fought each other, armies marched against their own people, and ordinary families lived in fear. It was a time of deep uncertainty, where peace was a dream and stability seemed impossible. When an emperor stepped in to stabilize Rome, it wasn't just about winning battles. It was about mending a broken spirit. It was about bringing calm back to people who had forgotten what calm felt like. Think about it, a world without a clear future, where tomorrow felt dangerous. Then, someone comes along, not with flashy promises, but with steady hands. They start to put things back together. piece by careful piece. They make sure laws are fair, that trade can happen safely, and that soldiers protect the borders instead of fighting among themselves. It's like when you're building a complicated model, and a lot of pieces are just scattered everywhere. You feel stressed and confused, but then, you take a deep breath, and you start sorting. You find the right parts, you follow the instructions, and slowly, the chaos turns into order. You begin to see the shape of something strong and complete emerging, that feeling of relief, that quiet satisfaction when something broken is finally made whole again. That's what a stabilizing emperor did for Rome. This kind of leader didn't always grab headlines with grand victories. Sometimes, their greatest triumph was simply making sure people could sleep at night without fear. It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful act isn't to conquer, but to heal, to bring a sense of quiet hope back to a world that desperately needed it. And that feeling, that sense of security restored, is a profound and lasting legacy. The guy who cared about his soldiers. Have you ever felt truly seen by someone in charge? Not just as a number, or a task to be done, but as a person with thoughts and feelings. In the Roman Empire, most emperors saw their soldiers as tools. They were there to fight, to build, to expand. Their personal lives, their fears, their pain, these often didn't matter much. But here's the thing, some emperors were different. They understood these were real people, far from home, facing death every day. Imagine marching for weeks, hungry, tired, your feet aching. Then, your emperor, the most powerful man, walks alongside you. He shares your simple meal. He asks about your family. He listens to your worries. This wasn't just a show. This was a deep, quiet understanding. It built incredible loyalty. When a leader truly cares, you don't just follow orders. You give your best, because you feel valued. Think about working on a big group project, or playing on a sports team. Maybe you had a teacher or a coach who really paid attention, not just to your grades or scores, but to you. They noticed when you struggled. They offered a kind word, or stayed late to help. That feeling, knowing someone is in your corner, makes all the difference, right? It makes you try harder. It makes you feel part of something bigger, where your well-being matters. For a Roman soldier, this kind of care was rare. It meant the difference between feeling like a pawn and feeling like a crucial part of a shared destiny. And that's why it matters. It reminds us that true strength isn't just about power or victory. It's also about empathy. It's about seeing the human heart in every person, no matter their role. It's a quiet lesson. Showing genuine care, truly valuing another person, can be one of the most powerful acts of leadership. It connects us to that simple, profound truth. Making laws that helped people. Have you ever thought about what it means for one person to hold so much power? Imagine being an emperor, at the very top. Your decisions could change the world for millions. For Roman emperors, making laws was a huge job. These weren't small rules. They touched everything. How people bought and sold, how crimes were judged, even who was free. Think about it like this. In your school, the principal makes rules. Some might seem annoying, like no phones in class, but other rules, like making sure everyone has a safe place to learn or enough books, actually help. Now, imagine that principal had power over an entire country, millions of students and families. That's the kind of weight an emperor carried. When a new law came out, it wasn't just a suggestion. It became the fabric of daily life, something everyone had to live by. For an ordinary Roman, or even an enslaved person, a good law could feel like sunshine after a storm. It meant fairness, not injustice. It offered protection, not fear. Maybe it was something small, like a new road for farmers, or a rule ensuring grain reached everyone. These acts of true leadership, born from a desire to genuinely help, were rare treasures. But let's be honest, not every emperor cared. Many wanted only their own power or comfort. So, for every law that brought hope, others brought hardship or took away basic rights. And that's the thing about power, isn't it? It's a tool. It can build amazing things, or it can tear everything down. The emperors who understood this, who used their power to lift people up, they left a different kind of mark, not just in history books, but in the quiet, hopeful memories of countless lives they touched. Their names might be famous, but it's the feeling of their care that truly echoes through time. His reign wasn't flashy, but it was solid. Have you ever thought about how sometimes the most important work isn't the loudest? We often remember the emperors who won huge battles or built giant monuments. They were flashy, for sure. But what about the ones who just kept things running. The leaders whose time on the throne wasn't filled with drama or grand conquests, but with quiet, steady effort. These solid emperors are like the quiet hum of a well-oiled machine. You don't always notice them, but if they weren't there, everything would grind to a halt. Their goal wasn't personal glory. It was making sure the everyday lives of millions of Roman citizens were, well, stable. They focused on things like fixing roads, making sure food got to the cities, or simply keeping the peace. This work often feels less exciting in history books, but it was incredibly vital for the empire to last as long as it did. Think about a school building. Everyone sees the cool new gym or the colorful murals in the hallway. Those are the flashy parts. But what about the foundation underneath? The pipes in the walls, the careful wiring that makes the lights turn on. No one takes pictures of those things, right? Yet, without that solid, unseen work, the whole building would crumble. It wouldn't stand for years. Holding all those lessons and laughter, that's the kind of leadership we're talking about here. It's about someone who quietly ensures the structure holds, not just adds new decorations. Their time might not have been a blaze of glory, but it was a deep, steady fire that kept the empire warm and safe. It teaches us that true strength isn't always about making the most noise. Sometimes it's about providing the quiet, consistent support that lets everyone else thrive. It's a powerful, humble truth about what makes something truly last. The emperor who kept the peace. Have you ever thought about what power truly means? Is it just about armies marching, about winning every fight? Or is there a different kind of strength, a quieter, deeper kind that helps everyone? For the Roman Empire, a place always on the edge of conflict, keeping peace was one of the hardest jobs an emperor could have. It wasn't about winning a single war. It was about making sure wars didn't even start, not at home, and sometimes not even with their neighbors. Here's the thing, peace isn't just when no one is fighting. It's an active effort. It's like a complex machine, like a huge clock with countless tiny gears. If even one gear breaks, the whole thing grinds to a halt. An emperor who kept the peace had to be a master mechanic of society. They had to make sure people had enough food, that laws were fair, and that justice was mostly served. They had to choose words over swords. Often, this meant making deals, building roads for trade, instead of just for soldiers. And sometimes, just knowing when not to push for more land or glory. Think about a school classroom. If the teacher is always yelling, or if students are constantly arguing, it's hard for anyone to learn. But a good teacher, someone who creates a calm space where everyone feels heard and safe. That's where real learning happens. That teacher isn't always the loudest or the toughest. They are the one who makes sure the day runs smoothly, so everyone can just be. And that's why an emperor focused on peace deserves a special kind of respect. Their victories weren't always loud or dramatic. They were in the quiet moments, a farmer planting his crops without fear, a family sleeping soundly through the night, a child growing up without knowing war. It's easy to admire the conquerors, but perhaps the greatest triumph is building a world where people don't have to live in fear. It's a heavy weight, yes, but a beautiful one, too. A quiet legacy that lets life simply thrive. A wise choice for a tough time. Have you ever been in a spot where a really hard decision stared you down? You knew whatever you chose would change things, maybe for a lot of people, and there was no easy way out. That pit in your stomach feeling, that weight on your shoulders, imagine that. But multiplied by millions of lives, by an entire empire hanging in the balance. That's what Roman emperors often faced. Their biggest battles weren't always with armies. Sometimes they were fought deep in their own minds, trying to find the best path when everything felt broken and hope was thin. It's easy to think a powerful leader just gives orders, demanding things happen. But here's the thing, the most respected emperors weren't just strong, they were often incredibly wise. Wisdom, in these tough, dark times, wasn't about knowing every fact. It was about seeing clearly, even when the world was chaotic. It was about choosing what was truly good for Rome, for all its citizens, even if it meant making unpopular calls, or deep, personal sacrifices. Think about when your sports team is losing badly. Your coach might make a tough call, maybe changing the whole strategy, or asking a star player to play a position they don't love. It might feel unfair in that moment, but if that coach made the choice because they truly believed it was the only way for the team to win or grow, that's a wise choice. They looked beyond immediate discomfort to the bigger picture. For the Romans, These wise choices could be about saving the economy, or finding peace instead of endless war. It might mean making sure everyone, not just the wealthy, had enough food to survive. It was about facing a scary truth, no matter how uncomfortable, and not running from it. And that's why it matters. True power isn't just about physical strength. It's the quiet courage to think deeply, to put others first, and to choose the path that, even if difficult, truly leads to a better, more hopeful day for everyone. That kind of choice echoes through history. He made Rome stronger, bit by bit. Have you ever tried to build something lasting, like a tall block tower, or a good habit, studying every night? It doesn't just appear overnight, does it? Here's the thing. Some Roman emperors weren't known for grand battles or stunning conquests. Their stories are quieter, but no less powerful. These leaders understood that making an empire strong wasn't always about new lands. Sometimes, it was about building from within, piece by piece. They might have fixed a road, ensuring grain-fed hungry families, or quietly updated an old law, making life fairer for ordinary citizens. Imagine a farmer, knowing his crops would safely reach market because roads were sound, or a craftsman, trusting the law protected his work. These small, steady improvements, often invisible in history, were like tiny, strong threads woven into Rome's fabric, making it more resilient. Think about a mighty tree. It doesn't grow huge in a day. Instead, it adds a tiny new ring each year, slowly getting taller, its roots growing deeper. Each ring seems small, but over decades, those rings create a giant, unshakable trunk. That's how these emperors worked. They understood that countless small, thoughtful decisions, made consistently, had a much greater, lasting impact than one dramatic event. And that's why it matters. It teaches us about a different kind of strength, a patient, dedicated courage. It shows that true power isn't always loud or flashy. Sometimes, it's a quiet hum of progress, a deep commitment to making things better, even without cheers. It's the profound truth that consistent, caring effort, bit by bit, creates something truly enduring, something that shapes the world for generations. The leader who listened to advice. Have you ever felt you had to know everything, or that admitting you didn't understand was a weakness? For Roman emperors, with all their power, that feeling could be even stronger. But here's the thing. The best leaders weren't those who pretended to know it all. They were the ones who truly knew how to listen. Imagine ruling a huge empire with so many problems. How could one person have all the answers? Some emperors were too proud, too afraid to seem weak. They isolated themselves. Often, their power crumbled. But others understood a deep truth. Wisdom isn't just knowing a lot. It's also knowing what you don't know. It means opening your ears and heart to voices around you, even the difficult ones. These leaders sought out wise senators, experienced generals, and trusted friends. They knew many minds working together could see more, solve more, protect more. Think about a tough group project in school. If one person tries to do everything, ignoring others' ideas, what happens? The project probably won't be great. But if the leader asks for everyone's input, listens to suggestions, and brings ideas together, the project becomes stronger, more complete. It's like a puzzle. Each person holds a piece. Only by putting them together do you see the picture. A leader who listens shows a different kind of strength. It's the quiet power of humility, the courage to be guided. True greatness isn't built alone. It's built on shared understanding, on believing every voice has value. Sometimes, the best path forward is found not by speaking, but by truly hearing. And that's why it matters. Building bridges, not just walls. Think about it. In a world as vast and busy as the Roman Empire, what really made some emperors great? Was it just their armies, their laws, or something deeper? We often hear about Roman walls, built to protect borders, to keep things separate. But here's the thing. The most powerful leaders, the ones who truly left a lasting mark, weren't just wall builders. They were bridge-builders. A wall often rises from fear. It's about keeping others out, saying what's us and what's them. It controls, it divides. But a bridge reaches across. It connects different sides, allows understanding and trade to flow. It's an invitation for people to come together, to share, and to build something stronger. Even with all their power, the wisest emperors understood that true, lasting strength didn't come from forcing people to obey. It came from earning their loyalty, from making them feel like a part of something grand, something shared. They found ways to unite different groups under a common purpose. Instead of just ruling through fear, think about a time you worked on a team project in school. If one person tries to do everything alone, or acts like only their ideas matter, it creates a wall, right? People feel shut out, and the project suffers. But what if someone listens to everyone's thoughts, helps different people connect their unique skills, and builds a way for every voice to be heard? That's building a bridge. The project gets better, and everyone feels a part of the success, because they are connected. This quiet kind of power, this bridge building, is about seeing others, even those who seem very different from you. It's a reminder that even the biggest empires, or the smallest friendships, grow truly strong not by pushing away, but by reaching out. And that lesson, echoing from ancient Rome, still whispers to us today. Real strength, lasting power, often comes not from how high you build your walls, but how wide you build your bridges. An emperor with a good heart. Have you ever wondered if someone with immense power could still have a truly kind heart? We often hear stories of rulers who become cruel, whose power changes them. But what if an emperor, in charge of millions of lives, genuinely cared? What if their main goal wasn't just conquering lands or building monuments, but making life better for their people? It sounds almost impossible, right? Rome's history is full of strong leaders, many focused on war or their own glory. But once in a while, a different kind of leader emerged. These were the emperors who understood that true strength wasn't just about armies or wealth. It was about justice, compassion, and working for the common good. They saw their role as a protector, not a dictator. Think about it like this. Imagine you're the captain of a sports team, or the leader of a big school project. It's easy to just tell everyone what to do, to focus only on winning or finishing first. But a truly good leader, one with a good heart, listens. They encourage, they make sure everyone feels valued and supported. They understand that a team works best when everyone is treated fairly and with respect. An emperor with a good heart acted like that, but on a massive scale, for an entire empire. They tried to build a society where people felt safe, where laws were fair, and where there was a sense of hope. It takes a special kind of person to hold so much power and still choose kindness. They chose to use their authority not to crush others, but to lift them up. And that's why it matters. Because even after thousands of years, the memory of an emperor who showed genuine care, who acted with a good heart, shines brighter than any palace they built. It reminds us that empathy, even in the highest positions, leaves the longest lasting legacy. The one who brought a sense of calm. Have you ever felt a huge sigh of relief after a really chaotic time? Maybe a fight with a friend stopped, or a big test was finally over. That calm, quiet feeling is powerful, right? For the Roman people, there were times when their world felt like constant earthquakes, wars, power struggles, and leaders falling left and right. It was a time when fear was a daily thing. Then, once in a while, a ruler stepped in who understood something deep about human hearts. They knew people didn't just want power or glory. They desperately wanted to feel safe. They wanted to know their families wouldn't starve, that their homes wouldn't be burned, and that tomorrow held some promise. This kind of emperor didn't just win battles. They won over minds and spirits by bringing peace. They built systems that lasted, like roads that connected everyone, or laws that felt fair, making life predictable in a good way. Think about it like this. If your school has been really stressful, maybe with lots of arguments or unfair rules, and then a new principal comes in, this principal doesn't yell or make big, sudden changes. Instead, they listen. They set clear, simple rules, and they make sure everyone feels heard and respected. Suddenly, the hallways feel a little less tense. People smile more. That's the feeling of calm returning, a sense that things are going to be okay. It's not about being exciting, but about being steady, like a strong tree in a gentle breeze. This kind of leader understood that true strength isn't always about being the loudest or the toughest. Sometimes, it's about the quiet work of making things stable, predictable, and kind. It's about creating a space where people can finally breathe, where they can build their lives without constant worry. And in the vast, often brutal story of Rome, the emperors who brought this peace, this quiet sense of calm, might just be the ones who truly helped their people flourish. Their legacy wasn't just in grand monuments, but in the softened worry lines on a farmer's face, or the secure laughter of a child playing in the street. That kind of peace, that sense of deep, quiet stability, is a gift beyond measure, a true mark of a leader's wisdom and compassion. His legacy, solid and dependable, Have you ever thought about what really lasts? Not the loud, flashy things, but the quiet, steady ones. When we talk about a leader's solid and dependable legacy, we're thinking about the kind of strength that isn't always seen on a battlefield or heard in a big speech. It's about building things, systems, and trust that stick around long after they're gone. It's the lasting effect of wisdom and care. Imagine a Roman emperor, not one focused on endless wars or giant, showy monuments, but on making sure the roads were safe, the water flowed cleanly into cities, and people felt secure in their homes. This emperor understood that real power often came from making daily life better for everyone. It wasn't about being famous for a moment. It was about creating something so fundamental, so useful, that generations later, people still benefited, perhaps without even knowing who started it. It's like planting a mighty oak tree. You might not see it grow much day to day, but over years, its roots go deep, and its branches spread wide, offering shade and shelter for ages. Its strength is in its steady, quiet growth and its reliable presence. Think about a strong, well-made bridge. When you cross it, you probably don't think about the engineers or the workers who built it. You just trust it. You know it will hold. That bridge is a dependable legacy. It wasn't built for a quick show. It was built to connect places and people for a long, long time. Its value isn't in how quickly it was made, but in how reliably it stands against time and weather, supporting countless journeys. And here's the thing about this kind of legacy. It builds quiet confidence in people. It means that even when big storms hit, there's a foundation that won't crumble easily. It means people can plan for tomorrow, because they know some things will remain constant. It's a gentle reminder that sometimes the greatest impact comes not from sudden dramatic change, but from the steady, unchanging effort to do what is right and what is necessary, day after day. It's the silent strength that truly endures, a comfort woven into the fabric of everyday life. The guy who planned for the future. Have you ever stopped to think about what happens after you're gone? Not just tomorrow, but years, even generations from now. Most of us, and many Roman emperors too, focused on the present. They worried about today's battles, today's feasts, today's power. But then, there were a few, truly special ones, who looked much further. They understood that being a leader meant planting seeds for trees whose shade they might never feel themselves. This isn't just about building giant monuments, though some did that too. It's about having a grand vision. It's about creating new, fairer laws, building strong roads that connect people for centuries, or setting up smart systems that keep an empire strong long after their own heart has stopped beating. It's a deep, quiet kind of courage, a selfless love for a future you would never personally witness. These emperors chose tough, sometimes unpopular things, always knowing it was for the greater good of Rome, not just for their own short-lived glory. Think about a scientist working for years on a cure for a disease. They might not see the end result, but they push forward anyway. Or imagine a group of people planting a forest, knowing it will take decades for the trees to grow tall and strong. They do it because they believe in the future, in the clean air it will provide, the life it will support. That's the same kind of feeling. It's a trust in humanity, a belief that what you do today can still echo with goodness far into tomorrow. It's a powerful thought that your actions can live on, making the world better even when you are just a memory. It shows us that true power isn't just about what you gain for yourself, but about what you choose to leave behind for everyone else. Protecting Rome's borders. Have you ever felt that worry, deep down, about keeping something safe? Like your favorite place, or maybe even your own room from a nosy sibling? For Roman emperors, that feeling was magnified 1,000 times. They had to protect a vast empire, stretching across continents, from enemies always waiting at the edges. Imagine standing on a cold, windswept wall, miles from your home. You're looking out into dense forests or across a wide desert, knowing that beyond those trees, beyond that sand, there are people who might want what you have, people who might want to take your land, your food, your way of life. This wasn't just about drawing lines on a map. This was about protecting families, farms, and futures. Every emperor understood this heavy burden. A strong border meant safety for millions, but a weak one meant chaos, fear, and invasion. And that's why it matters. Think about your own personal space, your bubble. If someone constantly pushed into it, how would you feel? Stressed, right? Maybe even scared. Now imagine that feeling, but for an entire civilization. Rome needed its emperors to be like a rock-solid fence, a shield, guarding everything precious within. They deployed legions, built massive walls like Hadrian's Wall in Britain, and constantly patrolled rivers and mountains. It was a never-ending job, a test of strength and will. The emperors knew the cost of failure. They knew what it meant for people to lose their homes, to live in constant fear. So, every decision about where to place a legion, or whether to fight or make peace, carried immense weight. It wasn't just strategy. It was a deeply human responsibility. They were the guardians, the ones who stood between the light of Rome and the shadows beyond. And in their hearts, they must have carried the weight of every person living within those borders. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the silent burdens leaders carry for all of us. A ruler who earned respect. Have you ever wondered what makes someone truly powerful? Is it just having the biggest army, or being able to make anyone do what you want? Or is there something deeper? Here's the thing. Real power, the kind that lasts, often comes from something else entirely. Respect. Imagine a Roman emperor. They had all the might in the world, armies and laws at their command. But some emperors were only feared. People did what they were told because they had to, because they were scared of punishment. But think about the rulers who truly earned the trust and admiration of their people. These were the ones who didn't just demand obedience. They listened, they tried to be fair, they showed they cared about the common person, not just themselves or their own power. It's a bit like being on a sports team, or working on a group project for school. You might have a team captain or a group leader who just bossed everyone around. You'd probably follow their instructions, but you wouldn't give your best effort. Not truly. But what about the leader who listens to ideas, explains why certain choices are made, and helps everyone feel like their part matters? That's the person you look up to. That's the one you want to work hard for, because you believe in them. In ancient Rome, emperors who earned respect built a kind of strength that no army could match. Their people didn't just follow orders. They believed in the vision. They felt valued. This made their rule more stable, more enduring. It's a powerful lesson, really. To be truly strong, to make a lasting impact, it's not always about how much you can take. Sometimes, it's about how much you give, and how you make others feel seen and important. That kind of power, built on true respect, echoes through time. He made life better for many Romans. Have you ever thought about what it truly means for someone in charge to make life better? Not just for themselves, or their friends, but for regular people, folks just trying to get through the day. We often hear about emperors who won big battles or built grand palaces. Those things sound important, sure. But for someone living in ancient Rome, what probably mattered more was much simpler. Imagine waking up each morning. Would you have clean water? Were the streets safe to walk down, or were thieves a constant worry? If you had a problem, like a broken roof or a neighbor causing trouble, would fair laws help you? Or would powerful people just do whatever they wanted? An emperor who truly made life better often focused on these everyday things. They might have fixed old aqueducts so fresh water flowed reliably. They could have set up courts where everyone, even the poor, got a fair hearing. Sometimes, they even stored food so no one starved when harvests were bad. Think about it like this. It's like when your city fixes all the bumpy roads and sidewalks. Suddenly, your walk to school is smoother, and your bike ride is safer. Or when your school principal makes sure the cafeteria food is good, and the bathrooms are always clean. These aren't huge, flashy changes, but they touch everyone's daily life. They reduce stress. They make things feel fair. This kind of emperor understood real strength wasn't just in their army, but in the peace and well-being of their people. A stable, happy population was a strong one. So, when we look back at these powerful figures, it's easy to focus on their crowns or conquests, but maybe the real measure of their impact, the true echo of their time, lies in the quiet, steady improvements they brought to millions of lives. It makes you wonder about the kind of mark we leave, not just with big gestures, but with kindness and fairness in the everyday. The emperor who saw the big picture. Have you ever stopped to think about what it truly means to look beyond today, beyond your next class, or even what's just happening next week? We're talking about seeing the whole sweep of time, the incredible way one choice can ripple out and touch not just your friends, but even generations far into the future. Most Roman emperors focused on the present, winning the next battle, collecting taxes for now, keeping things calm day by day. But a very special few, the ones whose names still carried deep weight in history, they saw something much bigger. These emperors weren't just thinking about the next season's harvest, or where the next army should march. They were truly imagining what Rome would be like in 50, 100, even 500 years down the line. They understood that their every action had consequences that would echo through the vast halls of time, shaping the lives of people they'd never meet. This isn't just careful planning, it's a deep, almost profound understanding of how everything connects. It's knowing that every road built, every law passed, every peace treaty made, was like a vital thread in the giant, intricate tapestry of the empire's long future. Think about it like this. Imagine you're playing a really big, long strategy game, like chess, where you're not just thinking one move ahead, but seeing the full winning plan many turns into the game. Or, maybe even simpler, consider how an amazing architect designs a grand building. They don't just sketch one room, they picture the entire magnificent structure, how the deep foundation supports the tallest roof, how the plumbing lines connect to every faucet, how the sunlight will pour through the windows morning and evening. They see the whole thing, finished and thriving, long before the first brick is even laid. An emperor with this kind of incredible vision carried a different, often heavier kind of burden, yes, but also a profound sense of purpose. They weren't just putting out daily fires. They were carefully planting seeds for a resilient, lasting forest. They understood that true strength isn't just about immediate power, but about building an enduring legacy. And that's a lesson that travels far beyond ancient Rome. When we learn to look at the whole picture in our own lives, from our friendships to our studies, we start to build something that genuinely matters, something that has deep roots and can withstand the storms. It helps us feel more connected, more purposeful, and maybe even a little bit timeless ourselves. A time of growth and prosperity. Have you ever felt that quiet calm when everything just seems to click into place? When your life feels steady and you know what's coming next? For the vast Roman Empire, there were special times like that too. These weren't just good years. They were eras when the empire truly breathed, stretching out in a feeling of safety and quiet power. We call this a time of growth and prosperity. What does that really mean for an empire? It means peace was more common than war. Roads were safe, so goods and ideas could travel freely. Cities bloomed with new buildings, bustling markets, and people who felt hopeful about their future. Farmers knew their crops would likely make it to harvest, and families could plan for their children's lives, not just worry about survival. It was a period when the world seemed to hold its breath in contentment, allowing grand projects to be built and new thoughts to be explored. Think about a time you've been really focused on a big school project. You put in the work, you feel prepared, and then everything just flows. The research makes sense, the words come easily, and you feel this deep, calm satisfaction as you see it all coming together. That feeling of stability and productivity, but across an entire vast land with millions of people, is a bit like Roman prosperity. It wasn't about being super rich, but about having a sense of security, knowing tomorrow would likely be good, too. These golden ages for Rome weren't just about marble statues or full treasuries. They were about the human spirit finding room to bloom. It shows us how much we need that stable ground beneath our feet to build, to dream, and to simply live without constant fear. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest strength isn't in conquest, but in the quiet, steady rhythm of peace. The leader who united people. Have you ever felt like everyone around you was pulling in different directions? Like in a group project where everyone has their own idea, and it's hard to agree. Now imagine that on a massive scale, an entire empire, full of diverse people, different beliefs, and old rivalries. A leader who united people wasn't just someone with a big army or clever strategies. They were someone who could mend those invisible tears between groups, someone who could help people see past their differences and toward a common goal. The Roman Empire was immense, stretching across vast lands with countless cultures, languages, and traditions. It was a place ripe for division, for arguments that could explode into civil wars, tearing the very fabric of society apart. The greatest emperors understood that true power wasn't just about conquering new lands. It was about conquering the discord within. It was about creating a sense of belonging for everyone, making each person feel like a vital thread in the grand tapestry of Rome. Think about a school sports team. Maybe some players are naturally talented, while others have to work harder. Maybe some friends only pass the ball to each other. If the captain doesn't unite them, if they don't help everyone play as one, the team will fall apart. But a leader who truly brings people together helps each player understand their role, value their teammates, and realize that their combined strength is far greater than any individual's. They create a feeling of shared purpose, a belief that together they can achieve anything. That ability to forge a single heart from many different ones is a rare and beautiful gift. It's not just about stopping fights, it's about inspiring hope, about showing people a future where they can stand shoulder to shoulder instead of back to back. Such a leader builds more than just roads or monuments. They build trust and a lasting peace within the soul of an empire. Their legacy isn't just in what they conquered, but in the harmony they created, leaving behind a profound sense of unity that echoes through time. His reign was a time to remember. Have you ever thought about how some moments just stick with you, like a specific summer or a year at school where everything felt truly different? For the emperors of ancient Rome, some of their times in power, their reigns, were exactly like that. They weren't just a list of dates and battles. They were periods that burned themselves into the hearts and minds of people, leaving an echo that stretched across centuries. Here's the thing. A time to remember doesn't always mean everything was perfect. Sometimes it was a time of great challenge, where people had to pull together. Other times it was a golden age, full of hope and new ideas. But no matter what, these moments truly felt alive. The emperor at the top wasn't just making laws. They were shaping the very air people breathed, the stories they told, the dreams they dared to dream. The weight of that responsibility, to be the one whose choices could color an entire era with joy or sorrow, is immense. Think about when your favorite sports team won a huge championship, or your community came together for something important. It wasn't just the win, right? It was the feeling in the air, the shared excitement, the sense of being part of something bigger. That collective memory is what makes a time truly unforgettable. A powerful emperor's reign could create that same deep, shared feeling across an entire empire. So, when we look back at these Roman emperors, we're not just counting their victories or failures. We're trying to understand the pulse of their era. What did it feel like to be alive then? What lasting mark did they press onto the world, making their time a memory that refused to fade? It reminds us how deeply connected we all are, across time, by the simple, profound fact of human experience. Every day, our own choices add to the memories others will carry. Building Rome to last. Have you ever looked at something truly ancient and wondered how it survived? How did it stand the test of time when so much else fades away? When we talk about Rome, we're not just talking about powerful emperors or big armies. We're talking about something deeper, an idea, a vision meant to endure. The Romans didn't just build for themselves, for their own moment. They built for their children and their children's children. They built knowing what they created today would shape centuries to come. Imagine you're trying to learn a new skill, like playing the guitar. You could try to learn one song fast, just for a talent show next week. But if you truly want to play guitar for years, to master it, you have to do things differently. You need to practice your scales, learn the chords properly, build muscle memory slowly, day after day. You need to build a strong foundation, not just a quick trick. That takes patience, and it takes believing in a future version of yourself who is a great musician. That was the Roman way. Their roads weren't just dirt paths. They were layered, strong, designed to carry legions and trade for hundreds of years. Their aqueducts weren't just temporary pipes. They were strong stone arches, bringing clean water for generations. They put care and thought into every stone, every law, every idea. It was about creating something so solid, so useful, that it became part of the fabric of life. Something people would rely on and cherish long after the builders were gone. It makes you think, doesn't it, about the quiet strength of planning for the future, about how our choices today, big or small, can lay down foundations for something truly lasting. It's a powerful feeling, knowing you're part of something much bigger than just your own breath. It's about leaving a mark, not just for fame, but for the good of all who follow. The emperor who was truly fair. Have you ever wondered if someone with huge power could actually be truly fair, not just equal, but fair in a way that really understands people's needs? We often think of emperors as strong, sometimes harsh, but what if an emperor tried every day to be just? This is Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't just a powerful general, he was a deep-thinking philosopher. He truly believed a leader's job was to serve the people, not themselves. For him, fairness wasn't just about rules. It meant seeing the good in everyone, from common people to important officials. He tried to judge problems not just by law, but by what was truly right and what helped society. He wrote about staying calm and kind, even in hard times. He saw himself as a shepherd for Rome, protecting and guiding. Imagine sharing pizza with friends. If you split it equally, everyone gets a slice. But what if one friend hasn't eaten all day, and another just had a big meal? A truly fair person might suggest the hungrier friend gets a bit more, making sure everyone still gets enough. It's about understanding different situations and trying to make things right, not just making them exactly the same. Marcus Aurelius tried to apply this thoughtful fairness to his whole empire. His goal was to lead with good character and clear reason. It's a heavy job, balancing so many lives. He didn't always get it perfectly right. No one can. But his honest effort, his deep commitment to what was good and just, leaves us with a quiet, powerful message. True fairness asks us to look beyond ourselves, to really see others, choosing understanding over quick judgment. It's a way of leading that touches the soul, even today. A vision for a better empire. Have you ever truly thought about what makes a leader powerful? Is it just armies or riches? Or is something deeper? Imagine being an emperor, looking over a vast, complicated world. What would be your deepest hope for millions of people? This isn't just about winning wars. It's about a vision. A vision means seeing past daily problems. It's picturing a future that is better, safer, fairer. Some Roman emperors, despite constant fighting, actually dreamed of this. They imagined enough food for all, clear and just laws. They hoped for peace to last generations. This idea, this longing for something better, was powerful. It was like a hidden current beneath battles and betrayals. Philosophers like the Stoics talked about focusing on what you can control and doing your best for the greater good. That's part of having a vision. Think about a big school project. If everyone just does their own thing, it will be a mess. But what if one person has a clear idea? Our presentation will tell a story, each person a different character. That's a vision. Suddenly, everyone knows what they're working toward. Even with hard work, that shared picture helps you move together. An emperor's vision was like that, but on a massive scale. Even if these grand visions never fully came true, dreaming them up was important. It showed leaders could look past their own needs. It reminds us that true leadership isn't just about ruling. It's about planting seeds of hope, inspiring people to believe a better future is possible. It's about leaving behind not just monuments, but the idea of a good society, an idea that can last forever. He left Rome stronger than he found it. Have you ever thought about what it truly means to make something better? Not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. For Roman emperors, this was one of their biggest challenges. Here's the thing, a good emperor didn't just keep Rome going. The great ones aimed higher. They wanted to leave the empire stronger than when they took over. Imagine leading a big school club or a community project. You see all the problems that need fixing. A powerful emperor wasn't just managing daily tasks. They were building for tomorrow, focusing on lasting improvements. This could mean tougher border defenses, a stable economy, or fairer laws for everyone. This wasn't about quick fame. It was about thoughtful actions benefiting generations of Romans they would never even meet. Think about a gardener planting a tree. They might not live to see that tree grow tall, providing shade and fruit for years, but they plant and care for it anyway. That takes a special kind of vision, right? It's a quiet act of faith in the future. An emperor who left Rome stronger fixed big issues, created new chances, and helped Rome thrive in a lasting way. They made sure the ground was fertile for future leaders and citizens. This leadership isn't always flashy or dramatic. It's often careful planning, steady effort, and making hard choices for the long term. It shows a deep sense of duty, a love for their empire that stretched beyond their own life. It's a legacy built not on what they got, but on the lasting strength and prosperity they gave to Rome. That really is a powerful and beautiful thing to think about. It's about creating something that endures, even after you are gone. The guy who inspired loyalty. Have you ever thought about why some people will stand by someone, no matter what? It's not about being forced. It's about loyalty. This isn't the kind of loyalty you get from fear, where people just obey because they're scared of what might happen. That kind of obedience breaks eyes. True loyalty is something much deeper. It's when people choose to follow and believe in a person or a cause. They do it not because they have to, but because they feel a deep trust and respect. It's like an invisible thread connecting hearts, stronger than any chain. In the ancient world of Rome, many emperors ruled with an iron fist. They had armies, laws, and the power to end lives. And yes, People obeyed, but a few, a very special few, understood something more profound. They knew that true power didn't come from forcing people to bow, but from inspiring them to stand tall, right beside you. They made their soldiers, their senators, and even the common citizens feel like they were part of something important, something shared. They didn't just give orders, they showed a vision, they cared for their people, and they earned that rare, precious gift of genuine devotion. Think about a school project, or maybe a team you're on. There's a leader who bosses everyone around, right? You might get the work done, but you probably don't feel great about it. Now, imagine a different leader, someone who listens to everyone's ideas, who makes sure everyone feels valued, even when things are tough. They make you feel like your contribution really matters. You want to work hard for that person, you want to make them proud, and you want the team to succeed, not just because you have to, but because you believe in them, and in what you're doing together. That's loyalty in action, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. This kind of loyalty is a quiet strength. It creates bonds that last through hardships, stronger than any law or threat. It's a leader's greatest achievement, not found in riches or raw power, but in the unwavering hearts of those who freely choose to follow. It reminds us that the deepest connections are built not on control, but on trust, care, and making others feel truly important. This leaves a legacy far beyond any empire. Rome's golden age under his hand. Have you ever felt that rare, perfect moment, when everything just feels right, calm, and full of hope? Imagine an entire empire feeling that way, not for a day, but for decades. For Rome, there were special periods, times when the world just settled. It wasn't about endless wars or brutal power struggles. It was about things working. New buildings rose, people felt safe. New ideas bloomed, changing how people lived. Here's the thing, those moments weren't accidental. They came because of one person at the top. Think about a leader who wasn't just powerful, but deeply wise. Someone who saw beyond their own fame and thought about millions of ordinary people. Under his hand, the city didn't just survive, it thrived. Roads became safe for travel, letting goods and ideas flow. Merchants could trade without fear. Art and poetry were celebrated, woven into daily life. Rome truly felt like the center of the world, not just because of its army, but because of its culture, peace, and comfort. People could plan for tomorrow, knowing their world wouldn't crumble. It's a bit like playing a team sport, and everyone works together perfectly. Passes are crisp, everyone knows their role, and the goal seems within reach. You feel that trust, that shared purpose. That's how a golden age can feel for a whole society, a period of shared achievement, guided by a steady hand. Such times remind us how fragile peace can be, and how truly precious. They show us that real strength isn't always found in conquest or loud shouts. Instead, it's in creating a world where people can simply live their lives fully, explore their talents, and flourish. One person, with vision and genuine care, could lift a whole civilization into its brightest, most peaceful days. This leaves a legacy of calm and beauty that echoed for centuries. And that's why it matters. The memory of what's truly possible when leadership genuinely serves its people. The emperor who made smart moves. Have you ever stopped to think about the quiet weight of a truly big decision? Imagine being an emperor of Rome. You're not just picking out clothes. You're deciding the fate of armies, the lives of thousands, the future of an entire world. That's a heavy burden. It's exactly where truly smart moves were born. A smart move for an emperor wasn't always about winning a bloody war or building a grand new monument. Often, it was subtler. It was knowing when to talk instead of fight, when to give a little to gain more later. It meant understanding the hearts of people, both friends and enemies. It was seeing the bigger picture, like a vast chess game played across mountains and seas, where every piece truly mattered. Think about solving a tricky puzzle, or talking through a disagreement with a friend. You don't just react without thinking, right? You pause. You consider different angles. You think about what might happen if you choose one path over another. Sometimes, waiting can be the smartest move. That quiet pause, that moment of deep thought, that's what we're talking about. For an emperor, a smart move could mean choosing peace when the empire was tired and bleeding. It might mean sharing power just enough to keep everything from falling apart. These weren't easy choices. They often meant swallowing pride, taking risks, or standing alone against popular opinion. But here's the thing. Those thoughtful choices often built something far stronger than any conquest. They created stability, a flicker of hope in a world often full of fear. They weren't flashy, but they were deeply powerful. They remind us that wisdom isn't about being the loudest or the strongest. It's about seeing clearly, even in chaos, and choosing the path that truly serves a greater good. And that, in its own quiet way, leaves a legacy that echoes far beyond any single lifetime. A legacy that still shines today. Have you ever stopped to think about how much of our world, right now, was shaped by people who lived thousands of years ago? It's kind of amazing, isn't it? The Roman emperors we've talked about, good or bad, left marks on history that are still incredibly clear, like ancient footprints in the sand that never faded. These powerful leaders made choices that ripple through time, changing not just their own empire, but how we live our lives today. Think about it. Our laws, many of our government ideas, even the roads we drive on, sometimes have roots that twist all the way back to Rome. They built things to last, not just structures of stone and concrete, but also ideas about justice, about order, about what it means to be part of a society. These ideas, hammered out in grand palaces and on dusty battlefields, still whisper to us. It's a bit like how a powerful river carves its path. Even if the river changes course or dries up over time, the deep canyon it created remains. You can see its shape, feel its impact, long after the water is gone. For instance, the very idea of a school principal and a student council, or having rules everyone agrees to follow, those basic structures of organization and shared power. Those ideas were strengthened and spread by the Romans. They believed in systems, in making things work for a lot of people, even if it meant harsh decisions sometimes. So when we look around at our own world, at the buildings, the legal codes, or even just the way we organize our towns, we're seeing echoes. We're feeling the presence of those emperors, their ambitions, their flaws, and their genius. It reminds us that every choice we make, every idea we share, also has the potential to become a whisper, or even a roar, in the future. Our lives are part of a very long story, stretching far back and reaching far forward, and that's pretty humbling to think about. He expanded Rome with wisdom. Have you ever stopped to think about what truly makes something great and lasting? Is it just about being the biggest, or having the most power? For some Roman emperors, expanding their empire wasn't always about winning battles with swords. Sometimes, the most powerful growth came from a different kind of strength, something quieter and deeper, wisdom. Here's the thing about wisdom for a leader. It's not just being smart, like getting good grades in history class. It's about seeing beyond today's problems. It's understanding that to make an empire truly last, you need to build more than just walls or conquer more land. You need to build trust, create real opportunities for people, and make them want to be part of what Rome offered. Imagine an emperor taking over a new city. They could just take everything, leaving people feeling angry and defeated. Or, they could do something different. Bring clean water, build new roads that connect them to the wider world, and introduce fair laws that protect everyone. This second way takes more thought, patience, and heart. But that's how you really expand an empire, by reaching people's hearts and minds, not just taking their territory on a map. It's a bit like trying to build a really strong, lasting friendship group. You don't just tell everyone what to do or demand they be your friend. We all know that doesn't work, right? Instead, you listen, you share, you find ways to make sure everyone feels included and important. You create a space where people feel safe, heard, and valued. That's how your group grows naturally, becoming stronger and more connected over time, because everyone feels a part of it. The same idea applied to Rome. So, when an emperor chose to expand Rome with wisdom, it meant they cared about the future of all their people. They thought about how to bring new cultures in, how to genuinely improve daily lives, and how to make the vast empire feel like a home for everyone, not just a place they were forced to obey. This kind of growth builds deep roots. It creates a feeling of belonging that can last for generations. It shows us that the greatest power isn't just about crushing others, but about lifting them up and weaving them into something larger and enduring. It's about making choices that echo with goodness, long after the noise of any battle fades into history. The leader who was a true statesman. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to be a statesman? It's a word we sometimes hear, but what does it really stand for? In ancient Rome, being an emperor often meant power, armies, and grand buildings. But a statesman, that's something far deeper. It's about looking beyond just your own reign, seeing the future, and making choices that help everyone. not just yourself or your closest friends. It's about having a vision that stretches way past your lifetime. Here's the thing, a statesman isn't just a boss. They're like someone planting a tree that they know will grow much taller than they'll ever be. They might not see the full shade it gives, but they plant it anyway, because they know it will benefit countless others. This takes a special kind of wisdom, a quiet courage to put the long-term good ahead of quick wins or personal glory. They understand that a stable society, where people can live well and feel safe, is the most precious thing they can leave behind. For Roman emperors who were true statesmen, this meant building systems that lasted. It meant figuring out how to manage a huge empire, not just through force, but through fair laws, smart infrastructure like roads and aqueducts, and making sure different groups could get along. It was a huge, often unseen effort, like how a good school principal tries to make sure the whole school runs smoothly, not just their own office. They focus on the well-being of all students and teachers for years to come, and that's why these leaders feel different. Their power wasn't just about demanding obedience, it was about earning trust and respect through thoughtful actions. They carried the weight of millions on their shoulders, choosing difficult paths because they knew it was the right thing for Rome's future. Their impact wasn't always dramatic or loud, but it was steady and strong, like a deep river flowing quietly through the landscape, shaping everything around it for ages. And that's why their legacy shines so brightly, a lasting testament to a selfless heart, a time of peace and great art. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to truly focus when things are calm? Like trying to draw or write, it's hard if there's noise or you're worried. Ancient Rome experienced this, but on a huge scale. For many years, Rome had a special time, the Roman peace. It wasn't perfect. Problems always remained, but mostly, the empire wasn't ripped apart by huge wars. The borders were safe, and leaders, even with their faults, brought a sense of order. Here's the thing, when people feel safe, not constantly worried about danger, something amazing happens. They get the space and energy to think beyond just survival. This is when human creativity truly shines. Think of building a complex Lego castle. You need a stable table and enough bricks. You can't build it if the table keeps shaking. This piece in Rome was that stable table. It let architects design incredible temples and aqueducts. Sculptors made statues that seemed alive. Writers created poems and plays exploring deep ideas. This stability let artists try new things, and thinkers ponder. It was a time when beauty and wisdom grew, like a flower needing calm weather to bloom. So, looking at the art from these peaceful years shows us something important. True progress and lasting beauty often come from quiet moments. It reminds us that stability, even from imperfect leaders, can inspire the most wonderful parts of being human. Peace isn't just not fighting, it's the rich ground where our best ideas can truly grow. The emperor who cared deeply for all. Have you ever thought about what it means to truly care for everyone around you, especially when you're in charge? Imagine being the most powerful person in the world, an emperor with vast lands and armies. Yet, your heart aches for the struggles of a farmer, a merchant, or even a child in a far-off city. It's easy to think of rulers as distant, focused only on power or wars. But sometimes, history surprises us. Sometimes, a leader rises who carries the weight of every single person's well-being on their shoulders. For the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, this wasn't just a job, it was his deepest calling. He believed his power wasn't meant for himself, but for the good of the entire empire. He followed a philosophy called Stoicism. It taught him that even if bad things happen, we can control how we react. More importantly, it taught him that all humans are connected, like parts of one body. His writings, called Meditations, are like a personal diary. In them, he constantly reminded himself to be patient, just, and kind to everyone, even those who wronged him. He truly aimed to be a better person, not just a better emperor. Think about a beehive. Every single bee, from the queen to the drones to the worker bees, has a role. If one part of the hive struggles, the whole hive is affected. A good beekeeper understands this, making sure every bee is healthy, not just the ones that produce honey. Marcus Aurelius saw Rome like that beehive. He saw himself as the one making sure every bee had what it needed to thrive, even if it meant personal sacrifice. He understood that true strength wasn't just about winning battles, but about lifting up ordinary people. It's a powerful idea, isn't it? That the greatest power isn't about control, but about compassion. It's about understanding that our well-being is tied to the well-being of others. This emperor showed us that even in ancient times, the deepest kind of leadership came from a place of profound human care, and that's something worth remembering. He ruled with both strength and kindness. Have you ever thought about what makes a leader truly great? Is it just having all the power, or is there something deeper? For many Roman emperors, being powerful meant being tough, even cruel. It meant winning wars and showing no weakness. But some of the most remarkable leaders understood a different kind of strength. They knew true power wasn't just about force, but also about kindness, fairness, and understanding. Imagine an emperor who could command vast armies and build incredible structures. That's strength, right? But what if that same emperor also cared deeply for ordinary people? What if they listened to problems, made sure people had food, and treated everyone with respect, not just the rich? This wasn't weakness. It was an even greater strength. It's the power to inspire loyalty and hope, not just fear. These leaders held immense authority but were deeply human, balancing firmness with a gentle spirit and fairness. Here's the thing. Think about a coach who only yells. Players might listen out of fear. But now, think about a coach who sets clear rules and expects hard work. That's strength. Yet also encourages you, explains mistakes kindly, and celebrates improvements. That's kindness. Which coach do you want to play for? Which one makes you want to try your best, even when things are tough? The coach who balances strength with kindness creates a team that believes in themselves and their leader. That rare balance, knowing when to be firm and when to be compassionate, makes a leader's rule powerful and lasting. It's about building trust, not just demanding obedience. Leading with a kind heart isn't weakness. It's perhaps the most powerful way to lead. It builds a legacy of respect and leaves behind not just monuments, but a feeling of peace and justice that echoes through time. Bringing Rome to its peak. Have you ever worked really hard on something, and for a short time, it just felt perfect, like everything clicked into place? That's a bit like what happened with Rome. For a precious stretch of time, after centuries of struggle and growth, the Roman Empire reached its highest point. It wasn't just about how big it was, or how many soldiers it had. It was about something deeper. Think of it like a massive, complex machine. Rome had been built piece by piece, sometimes roughly, sometimes beautifully. But for a while, during what historians call the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, all those gears and levers hummed together in harmony. This was a time when emperors weren't just about conquering new lands. They were about building, organizing, and making life better for the millions of people who lived under Roman rule. Imagine roads stretching for thousands of miles, connecting distant towns, aqueducts carrying fresh water into huge cities, courts that gave people a sense of fairness, and a general feeling of safety that let people focus on their lives, their families, and their crafts. It's like when you're building a really big Lego set. You follow the instructions, piece by piece, and it can be frustrating sometimes. You might even make mistakes. But then, there's a moment when the last big section clicks in, and you step back. You see the whole thing, sturdy and impressive, exactly as it was meant to be. That feeling of completion, of seeing something magnificent come together, that's the peak. This was a time when Rome felt like it had truly mastered the art of empire. But here's the thing, even the most perfect moments don't last forever. That period of peak greatness, when everything felt strong and right, it teaches us something powerful. It shows what humans can achieve when they work together towards a common vision of order and prosperity. It's a reminder of the amazing things people can create, but also how delicate that balance can be, even at its best. It makes you wonder about the work it took to get there, and the quiet sadness that comes with knowing such perfection is often fleeting. The guy who is both warrior and builder. Have you ever thought about someone who is super tough, like a warrior, but also really good at making things, like a builder? It seems like two totally different kinds of strength, right? One is about breaking things, winning battles. The other is about creating, making things last. Well, some Roman emperors had to be both. Imagine leading an army into fierce battles, facing danger head-on, protecting your people from invaders. That's the warrior part. But then, when the fighting was done, they also had to turn around and build. They built roads that connected distant lands, temples that reached for the sky, and laws that shaped society for hundreds of years. This wasn't just about winning wars. It was about creating a lasting home, a stable empire, for everyone. It shows a deep care, a responsibility that goes beyond just power. Think of it like a coach for a sports team. They have to be tough and strategic during the game, making smart plays to win. That's their warrior side, pushing their team to victory. But a great coach also helps build the team off the field. They encourage teamwork, teach new skills, make sure everyone feels valued, and create a strong community. They're building character and a strong group spirit. They fight for the win, but they also build the foundation for future success and friendship. This balancing act, this ability to both defend and construct, is really amazing when you think about it. It asks for a kind of strength that isn't just about force. It's about vision, about looking ahead and asking, what will last? What will truly help people live better lives? It's a powerful lesson, reminding us that true strength often comes from being able to protect what you love. And then, with equal effort, build something even better for it. It's about knowing when to stand firm and when to lay a new brick. That's a legacy that touches your heart, making you feel safe and hopeful, all at once. His decisions shaped Rome's future. Think about it for a moment. How many paths stretch out before you every day? You make choices, big and small. Maybe you pick one outfit over another, or decide to study for a test instead of just playing games. These choices feel personal, right? They change your own day, your own path. But what if your decisions didn't just affect you, but millions of people, for hundreds, even thousands, of years? That was the incredible, heavy burden of a Roman emperor. They stood at the very top of an enormous, powerful world, holding more sway than almost anyone before or since. Every single day, they faced choices that were almost impossible. Choices that felt like the weight of the entire known world rested on their shoulders. Should they raise taxes on ordinary citizens, or risk the army not having enough money to protect the borders? Should they build a new, magnificent road connecting far-off lands, or defend a distant border from invaders? Each yes or no wasn't just a simple answer. It was a ripple sent crashing through time, shaping destinies. A choice made in a palace in Rome could mean a family in a far-off province would thrive and prosper, or tragically starve and lose everything. Here's the thing. It's a bit like being the captain of a massive ship, sailing through unknown stormy seas. Every course correction you make, every order you give, every decision to hoist the sails or drop anchor, changes where that ship goes. And not just for you, but for every single person on board. One wrong turn could mean disaster. A good choice could lead to new lands and safety. The emperor's choices were like that, but with real lives, real cities, and the very spirit of an empire at stake. These were the moments when history was truly forged, not just in roaring battles or grand speeches, but in quiet rooms, behind heavy, imposing doors, where one human being weighed options that could bless or doom countless generations. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What kind of immense courage, what kind of deep wisdom does it truly take to carry that kind of overwhelming responsibility? To know that your thoughts, your fears, and your deepest hopes would literally carve the future of an entire civilization. It's a powerful, almost heartbreaking thought, how much one human heart can ultimately impact the world for all time. The emperor who made Rome respected. Have you ever felt like your voice wasn't heard, or that what you said didn't really matter to others? Maybe your team at school was losing, and people stopped taking them seriously. That feeling of not being respected can sting. Imagine a whole empire feeling that way. Rome, at different times, saw its power fade. Other nations ignored its warnings, or simply laughed. But then, an emperor came along. This wasn't just about winning battles, though that was a part of it. It was about something deeper. It was about making Rome stand tall again, not just with swords, but with its character. He made Rome's word mean something again. Think about it like this. When you walk into a room, and people stop talking and actually listen when you speak, that's respect. It's not about being the loudest or the scariest. It's about a quiet strength people just feel. This emperor understood that true respect isn't built on fear alone. Fear makes people obey, but it doesn't make them admire or trust you. He made Rome's laws fair, its borders strong, and its people safe. He kept promises and served justice. It was like fixing a broken reputation, piece by careful piece. Just like if you always do your homework and help out, your teachers and friends start to see you as dependable and trustworthy. They respect you because you've earned it, not because they're afraid you'll get mad. And that's why it matters. When Rome was respected, its citizens felt proud. Other nations sought its advice, not just its protection. It allowed for peace and growth that fear alone could never create. It's a reminder that true strength comes from earning trust and showing fairness, making others value who you are, not just what you do. A true guardian of the empire. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to protect something, not just with strength, but with your whole heart? When we think of a Roman emperor, we often picture mighty armies and grand victories. But some emperors were more than just conquerors. They were true guardians. A guardian of the empire wasn't someone who just sat on a grand throne, shouting orders or seeking riches. No, it was someone who carried the immense weight of millions on their shoulders every single day. They saw the vast empire not as their personal toy, but as a fragile, precious thing they had to keep safe for everyone, especially for the generations yet to come. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a younger sibling or a close friend who really looks up to you. You wouldn't just boss them around, right? You'd watch out for them. You'd make sure they were okay, even if it meant giving up something you wanted for yourself. You'd make tough decisions to keep them safe, healthy, and happy. That's a bit like what a guardian emperor did. They weren't focused on getting rich or just being powerful. Their mind was on making sure roads stayed safe, food got to cities, laws were fair, and borders were secure, all so people could live their lives in peace and build a future. These emperors understood that their own time in charge was short, but the empire itself was meant to be forever. They made choices that would benefit not just themselves, but generations yet to come. It's a deep kind of love, really, not for power, but for the well-being of a whole society. It means choosing responsibility over personal glory, and quiet, steady service over loud praise. It's a powerful lesson, reminding us that true leadership isn't about being in charge, but about selflessly taking care of what truly matters, even when no one is watching. And that's why some emperors, through their quiet strength, truly stand out in history. The leader who set new standards. Have you ever stopped to wonder what truly separates a good leader from an unforgettable one? It's not always about grand armies or dazzling riches. Sometimes, a leader emerges who doesn't just do their job. They redefine what that job even means. They don't simply walk the worn path. They lay down a brand new road, changing the journey for everyone who follows. This isn't just about winning battles or holding power for a time. It's about building a foundation of ideas, of values, that lasts long after they are gone. Think about a Roman emperor who, instead of just managing the empire, decided to look at its very soul. Maybe they saw deep unfairness and felt a profound need to make things right, even when it was difficult and unpopular. Or perhaps they championed education, believing that knowledge was the true strength of a people, creating schools or libraries where none existed. This kind of leadership creates a new sense of what is expected, what is possible. It's like a scientist who discovers a fundamental law, like gravity. Before Isaac Newton, people knew things fell, but he gave us a clear, elegant explanation that changed how we understood the entire universe. He set a new standard for scientific inquiry. A leader who sets new standards leaves an emotional imprint far deeper than any law or victory. Their true legacy isn't just a list of things they did. It's a quiet whisper of possibility, a shift in the collective heart. They show what people could be, what a society could achieve, and that's why it moves us, even centuries later. It reminds us that even in ancient Rome, amidst all the struggles and ambition, there were individuals who reached beyond their own time, daring to imagine and build a better future. It makes us pause and consider the silent power of setting a good example, of choosing kindness, or of working for fairness. What new standards might we set today, right where we are, for our own little corner of the world? Rome's unforgettable architect of success, what really makes something last. Not just a quick win, but something strong for centuries. When we look at the story of Rome, some emperors did more than just lead armies or sit on a fancy throne. They were like quiet architects, building the bones of the empire itself. These weren't always the loudest emperors, or even the ones with the biggest statues. They focused on what truly mattered for the long run. They worked on things like making sure roads connected distant towns, bringing fresh water to cities, or creating laws that were fair for everyone. Their decisions weren't for instant glory, but for the well-being of people who hadn't even been born yet. It was deep thinking, looking far beyond their own lifetime. They understood that to make something truly great, you have to build it from the ground up, with a steady hand and a clear vision. Here's the thing, it's a bit like a big, old oak tree. A strong tree doesn't just appear overnight. It grows slowly, sending roots deep into the earth, building a thick trunk, and spreading branches over many, many years. Each tiny root, each new ring in its wood, makes it stronger and more able to face storms. The architect emperors of Rome did the same. They focused on those deep, unseen roots, the systems, the infrastructure, the sense of order that held the vast empire together, piece by piece. They knew that a lasting structure isn't about how tall it is today, but how deeply it's rooted. So, when we think about true leadership, it often comes down to this quiet strength. It's about caring enough to build something that lasts, something that benefits countless others long after your own time has passed. It's a powerful lesson in how real success isn't always about being first, but about leaving behind a solid, hopeful foundation for the future. He created lasting peace and wealth. Have you ever stopped to think about what it really feels like when things are just stable, when you don't have to worry about the next big problem popping up, or whether something important might fall apart? For centuries, after years of endless battles and leaders fighting each other, Rome finally found this kind of steady calm. This wasn't just a break from war. It was a deep, quiet peace that stretched across a huge empire for a long, long time. They called it the Pax Romana, which just means Roman peace. Here's the thing. Before this, Roman life was often a mess. One general after another tried to grab power, and civil wars tore families and towns apart. Imagine trying to build a really amazing treehouse in your backyard, but every other day, someone comes along and tries to chop down a branch, or even the whole tree. You'd never get to actually finish it, would you? You'd be too busy just trying to keep it from falling apart. But when the fighting stopped, when a strong emperor finally brought order and security, people could start building things that lasted. Roads were safe for travel. Farmers could grow food without fear of soldiers marching through their fields. Traders could journey far, bringing new goods and fresh ideas across the land. This kind of peace wasn't simply the absence of conflict. It was about creating a sense of deep security that allowed people to breathe. It let them plan for their futures, and even to dream a little about what their lives, and their children's lives, could be. When you feel safe, when your basic needs are met, you can focus on so much more than just survival. You can learn, you can create art, you can invent new tools, and you can connect with others in meaningful ways. It reminds us how much human strength and creativity can bloom when there's a stable, calm ground beneath our feet. And that's why this period of peace matters so much, showing us what's truly possible. The emperor whose wisdom still echoes. Have you ever paused to think about a truly ancient voice, a whisper from history, that still speaks to us today about how to live? It's amazing, isn't it, how some thoughts can cross thousands of years and still feel fresh. There was a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius. He was one of the most powerful men in the world, leading vast armies and ruling an enormous empire. But his real lasting power, the kind that still resonates, wasn't found on the battlefield or in grand palaces. It was found inside his own mind. He kept a kind of personal diary, not for sharing, but for himself. In it, he wrote down his deepest thoughts, his rules for living, and how he tried to stay good and strong, even when everything around him was falling apart. This collection of thoughts is known as his Meditations. Here's the thing about his wisdom. It wasn't about controlling others, but about controlling himself. He believed that while we can't always choose what happens to us, we can always choose how we react to it. This idea is a huge part of an old philosophy called Stoicism. Imagine you're trying to study for a big test, but your little brother keeps making noise, or your phone keeps buzzing with messages from friends. You can't magically stop your brother from being noisy, and you can't control what your friends are doing, but you can choose how you react to these distractions. You can get angry and lose focus, or you can choose to take a deep breath, close your door, and focus on what you can control, your own effort and attention. That's the core of what Marcus Aurelius practiced every single day, even when he faced wars, plagues, and betrayal. And that's why his message still matters. It's a gentle reminder that our greatest strength isn't in what we own or how much power we have, but in the quiet, steady choices we make about our own thoughts and actions. His wisdom tells us that peace isn't found in a perfect world, but in a well-ordered mind. It's a powerful, comforting thought, a quiet echo across time, reminding us we always have the power to choose kindness, courage, and calm. A visionary who made Rome shine. Have you ever wondered what it takes to truly change the world? Not just for a moment, but for centuries. We often think of emperors as powerful, maybe even cruel, but some had a different kind of strength. Vision. A visionary leader isn't just someone who rules today. It's someone who can look far into tomorrow, seeing not just what is, but what could be. They don't just manage problems, they imagine solutions that haven't even been thought of yet. They see the future of their people, of their city, and they work to build it, brick by careful brick. Think about someone who plans a huge project, like building a massive bridge across a wide river. They don't just start dumping materials into the water. First, they imagine the finished bridge, how it will look, who will use it, and how long it needs to last. They draw blueprints, calculate every stress point, and choose the strongest materials. That takes foresight, a deep understanding of what's needed, and a belief that something amazing can be created for everyone. An emperor with vision was like that. They didn't just win battles, they thought about how those victories would shape Rome's identity for generations. They didn't just collect taxes. They imagined how those resources could be used to build aqueducts that would bring fresh water for hundreds of years, or roads that would connect distant lands, making trade easier and bringing people closer. It's a quiet strength, this ability to dream so big for others. It's a love for Rome that stretched beyond their own lifetime. These emperors didn't just want personal glory, they wanted Rome itself to shine, to be a beacon of strength and order. When we talk about a visionary, we're talking about someone who understood that the true legacy of power isn't about what you take, but what you leave behind for the world. It's about building a future that others can stand upon, solid and bright. His reign was pure gold for the empire. Can you imagine a time when everything just worked? A vast, powerful empire, running smoothly for many years. For Rome, a pure gold reign wasn't just about coins. It was something deeper. It meant peace. People weren't constantly afraid of war or enemies at their borders. Armies were strong, but mostly quiet. This golden time meant prosperity. Markets were full, and families had enough to eat. New roads helped trade, and cities grew with grand buildings and good water. Laws felt fair to most. Justice was real. People woke up knowing what to expect, feeling secure. This stability was like a steady heartbeat for the Roman world. Think about what that feels like. A deep breath after a long storm. A sense of security that lets you live without constant worry. It's rare for any country to hit such a sweet spot. It takes a certain kind of leader, wise, steady, focused on their people, and sometimes a bit of luck. Good leaders don't just fix problems, they build a future where everyone can thrive. It's a bit like a big group project for school. Sometimes it's messy and confusing, but then there are those times when everyone understands their role and helps each other. The whole thing just flows, the work gets done smoothly, and the final project feels strong. That's what a pure gold age felt like for the Romans. A massive project where all the pieces fit, creating something truly great for everyone. These pure gold moments remind us how much good leadership matters. A great leader doesn't just command, they create an environment where everyone can flourish. They build calm and hope for all. Even centuries later, we look back and feel a little of that peace, that sense of a job well done. It shows us what's possible when things go right. That feeling of deep well-being is truly priceless, a treasure, more valuable than any actual gold. The greatest Roman emperor, a legend. Have you ever wondered what makes someone truly legendary? We talk about great leaders, but what does that really mean? Is it someone with the most power, the biggest armies, or the grandest palaces? Or is it something deeper, something that touches the lives of ordinary people long after they're gone? For the Roman emperors, this question carried immense weight. They ruled a vast world, holding the fate of millions in their hands. But here's the thing, true greatness wasn't just about wielding power, it was about how that power was used. A truly legendary emperor wasn't just a conqueror, they were a builder of a better world. They thought about the future, about fairness, about keeping people safe and fed. Think of it like a master architect designing a magnificent bridge. It's not just about how tall the bridge is, or how strong, it's about how many people it connects, how it makes travel easier, how it stands the test of time, helping generations cross safely. The greatest Roman emperors built metaphorical bridges for their people. They created laws that brought order, built roads that connected communities, and sometimes they even offered hope when times felt dark. This kind of leadership isn't about ego or glory. It's about understanding the human heart, the struggles, and the quiet dreams of the people you serve. The legend isn't just carved in stone monuments. It's etched into the collective memory of a civilization, a feeling of security, a sense of belonging. And that's why it matters, because the echo of a truly great leader isn't in their shouts of victory, but in the enduring peace and opportunity they leave behind for us to discover.